Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Back under center, followed by Lipke and Pollard. Fakes it to Pollard, steps up, throws back to the end zone. There's CeeDee Lamb, tumbling, but he gets both feet down. Touchdown Cowboys, and they retake the lead in the first. Belt-tie snap, Prescott with plenty of time. Locks it, end zone, Jake Ferguson. Covered by Jamal Adams, but it doesn't matter. Fergie into the end zone, and Dallas takes the lead in the fourth.
I let up ahead Weatherspoon. Weatherspoon, left wing, finds a cutting mark, beats it underneath the golden throw, right-handed jam. Wonderful transition basketball at 70-50. Florida Atlantic.
The trigger man, left baseline. Looking, alley-oop to Jalen Moore for the hammer. A rim rattler. Oh, he shook McCaslin with that one. LSU ran away in the early moments of the second half. And they continue to pour it on. Up over 80 points, now 82. Reese with the basket.
This Big East, Big 12 battle has been tied 5-5. This year, no chance. They're playing 11 games. And there's a dunk and a scream from Ryan Kalkbrenner, a 9-2 Blue Jays run and their first lead.
The defense on that possession by Kalkbrenner. He just didn't give up position, got big down low.
Kalkbrenner for three. And that has been the biggest improvement in his game this year.
Good morning. Welcome to your Friday. It's our Friday as well.
Heck
I
yeah.
probably need to hop in the stream here.
That'd probably be nice.
We're just going to do the production of the show live on air while I figure my life out here. There's no Nebraska football, so I feel okay opening the show with this. We started off air talking a lot of fruit talk this morning. So as you know, Andrew and I usually both drink a energy drink before the show or as the show is getting started. Hey, I'm in the stream now, Shano. And so this morning,
some form of sparkling, syrupy, energetic juice in the morning.
And you've got a variety pack, and so you come in with a different flavor most mornings. And this morning, the flavor was kiwi guava.
That is correct.
And you asked
no free plugs.
You asked me if because you poured into your cup because we had some color issues earlier this week. Arctic blue apparently is yellow, and it's like the only time it's yellow in the Arctic is when somebody pees in the snow, and I'm not trying to drink that.
And if we learned anything from Elf,
don't eat yellow snow. I just watched that, I think, the day after Thanksgiving because we were kicking off Christmas season. So
I love that movie.
I do too.
I know some people don't.
Well, those people are dumb.
I think so too.
I don't know what to tell. If you can't enjoy Elf on some level, I don't know what to tell you.
I'm with you.
So I was like, Arctic and yellow don't really mix for me. So you ask me, hey, is that what color you would expect kiwi guava to be? And I was like, man, I'm going to be honest with you. I couldn't pick a guava out of a lineup. I don't think I've ever seen a guava.
You got a gun to your head.
I've heard,
I'd be kidnapped, and they're like, all right, Ravi, we'll let you go, but you have to tell us which one of these three fruits are a guava.
I might be able to figure it out just by context clues, but if you just set one in front of me and said, what is this? I'm guessing probably either like guava or like kumquat, because those are the ones I've never seen before. Kumquat. It's a fruit or a vegetable or something. It is something that grows on trees, I believe. Or in the ground,
apples,
or it comes from nature. A lot of things do. And then we were talking. I don't know how we got onto pears, but I was like, I had an Asian pear this morning.
Well, I said, all right, Ravi, tell me the difference. Is this a pear or a guava? And you're like, no, I like pears.
I
would know what that is.
I do like pears, and I like Asian pears because they're kind of like a mix between a pear and an apple. So we're talking a lot about fruit this morning.
Sure.
And that's all. That I don't have any transition to that, so we're gonna move on. I just wanted to share that with the people and let them know what
was fresh on the mind, like our fruit.
What was going exactly incredible. You know what else is fresh on my mind? Now that's a transition.
But if you call it out, it makes it bad.
Shoot. I didn't go to TV school, Andrew.
Yeah, that's a bad transition.
One of the other things that's been fresh on my, it actually broke late in late in our show yesterday, was Sports Illustrated, which is perhaps a fruit gone bad at this point. They named Deion Sanders their sports person of the year.
They did.
Now, just as a reminder, if you didn't watch the last 9 weeks of college football, Colorado didn't end up being good. They started 3-0 and then proceeded.
Then AI wrote the story
to lose 8 of their last 9 games, including blowing enormous leads to teams like Stanford, who is terrible. I mean, truly awful. And they're like, hold on, here's we're gonna spot you 21 points, and then we're gonna go ahead and lose to you, terrible Stanford. So I'm having a hard time coming up with a legitimate reason other than Sports Illustrated is a dying entity and they're just trying to get clicks. And by the way, it worked. Deion and Sports Illustrated were trending together on Twitter yesterday. So kudos for you at Sports Illustrated to trend for a day. Most people were trolling you, to be fair, but you were trending. Well done, sir, or ma'ams.
Clickbait is also good press.
Yeah, it is good press, but when you're just being dragged on the internet, like maybe we should have thought this
Robbie,
through.
Let me tell you, though, I'm going to give you 3 reasons why
Okay.
Deion Sanders is Sports Person of the Year.
I'm not going to like this, but go ahead.
He's so good.
That all of
Assistants are leaving
so
because they know they will never be good enough to be a part of Deion's staff. Reason number 1. Reason number 2, he's so good, recruits are decommitting because they know they're not good enough to play for Deion Sanders' team.
You're right. When you're right, you're right.
And last but certainly not least, he's so good, he won 4 times the games that Colorado won last season. 4 times the games. That number is so high, Kirby Smart and Nick Saban can't even say that.
He won 400% more games.
That is
year
why
over
Deion
year.
Sanders is your Sports Person of the Year, Ravi. I think you're missing it. I think you're missing the point.
You know, it is kind of funny because I said at the start of the year, if they win like 4 or 5 games, it's a miraculously successful year. But when they start 3-0 and then lose 8 out of 9, it takes a little wind out of those sails. It's kind of like you were talking about with Rule earlier this. I think it was this week or maybe last week, but they started 5-3, and people got a little out over their skis about what could happen. Right? People are.
Expectations change
because they won in the wrong order a little bit. Right? Like if they lose 8 of their first 9 and then win 3 straight to end the season, like, okay, maybe a little positive momentum. Maybe they feel the same way about Deion, the way we felt about Scott Frost after he started the season 0-6 in his first year. Scott Frost also finished 4-8, did not win Sports Person of the Year in his first year as a coach at Nebraska, just in case anybody was wondering. I don't know how. But that's the funny thing is actually winning 4 games from the team they had last year is actually a really good job. If it hadn't looked the way it looked, right? If they hadn't been so like the amount of vindication that came for people like me who was like, I don't like how this is happening. I don't think this makes any sense. This feels like smoke and mirrors. It feels like they've got a super average roster and a couple guys, you know, whether it's Shedeur or Travis Hunter or Dylan Edwards, the running back. Outside of those guys, you're like, they're kind of just mid-level, Pac-12 guys.
Maybe
and
even below average Pac-12
Yeah,
guys.
I mean, you lose 8 out of 9, you blow 21.
Line play wasn't good.
It was atrocious. I mean, remember, as Deion, he's got to go in the portal, pay some guys. And listen, everybody wants to go in the portal and pay some guys, right? But
yeah, at least $1 million, $1.5 million, something like that.
Well, that's for quarterbacks. Linemen, I mean, you know, good offensive linemen might fetch the same thing. So do pass rushers. But this is what happens if you're a front runner and all of a sudden you're not at the head of the pack anymore. And Deion is, if nothing else, in my mind, a front runner. He loves to tell people how great he is and tell people how great his program is. And listen,
that's how they make their money, though.
I get
that's how
that.
they get their fame.
And the confidence is fine and whatever, right? But when that isn't working, what's your plan B? Like, what's Deion's plan B? Is he just going to turn the roster over every year the way he did last year? Because guess what? It's one thing to do it in year 0 when it's none of your guys. You're like, hey, I'm bringing in all my dudes. It's another thing to be able to do it when you brought in 80 of these guys and you're like, just kidding, you guys aren't good enough either. Boot. And then you do it going in from year 2 to year 3, and you're like, hey, your guys aren't good enough either. Oh, and I need a quarterback. Like, how long are guys going to continue to sign up to be disposable? Because I don't think it's very long.
No, not at this level.
That's what I mean.
And Deion, as much as he says he's in it for the long haul at Colorado, he's not. He's just not. That's just not what he's built for.
As soon as Shedeur and Travis Hunter are gone, he's gone.
He's finding something new to do. But I'll say this. The worst thing that you can do is give somebody with a big head some early wins.
Oof.
And that's exactly why Colorado was so exhausting this season. It's because you upset the national runner-up to open the season. Yet, yes, that looks good on paper, but if you actually look at the teams lined up on paper, you'd notice that TCU turned over close to half of their roster, and they weren't the same team as they were last year. They were probably built for the same position Colorado built themselves for in the Big 12.
Also, like, I don't know if you remember at the start of the year, I was like, this is probably like a 6-6 TCU team. And what did they end up? 6-6, 5-7, something like that. Like right in that neighborhood, right? So, like, yes, it looked really good up front. But when you actually look at the reality of this team, okay, you don't have Heisman runner-up Max Duggan. You don't have a bunch of dudes on that roster that made them what they were. So, yeah, you get the juice from beating the national runner-up. But if you actually look at it, it's like, yeah, that's a super average team.
TCU ended the season 3-6 in conference play, 5-7 overall. Okay.
Yeah, they're exactly.
I'm going to go through this for you. Let's go through Colorado's wins for a hot sec. Nebraska ended the season 5-7.
Same
overall.
As TCU. Yep. Also, I believe 3-6 in conference.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right on the nose. They also beat Colorado State in overtime, a game that I actually thought Colorado State played better.
Yeah, I did too. I did too.
And also, if we want to talk about teams that played better, like Arizona State was also neck and neck with Colorado this season.
Also, Arizona State is terrible.
Right. And Colorado State ended this season 3-5 in conference play, 5-7 overall. So those are the first 3 wins to losing record teams.
Yes. And
that's Colorado's 3 wins on the year.
And 2 of the first 3 most people imagined would be losing record teams. Like, most people didn't think Nebraska would have a winning record. If they did, it was like 6 nationally. I thought they'd be a little better, but nationally, most people didn't think Nebraska would have a winning record, and most people didn't think Colorado State would have a winning record.
And then Arizona State 2-7 in conference play, 3-9 overall. Those are the 4 wins for Colorado this season.
Yeah,
they beat losing teams.
Yeah,
they beat teams that either they could have won the game or the other team could have won the game.
Yeah,
they did not win a game against a team that was like, hey,
that was any good.
Yeah, you probably should lose this game,
especially Nebraska at that point in the season.
Now,
right?
TCU to open the year, I don't want to take that away. TCU was like a 7-point favorite, I believe.
They were
maybe even more.
They were a favorite.
You know what? I think it was more because they were like plus 800. I think Colorado.
I think they were like a 2 touchdown dog.
Yeah,
but again, I think that was a lot of the unknown of what Colorado was, and an assumption that TCU would be able to retain a little bit of their magic from last year, and that was a dumb assumption. To be fair, like, you lose the quarterback who basically fueled your entire season, and TCU wasn't supposed to be that good last year. And so you go into it assuming they're like, listen, I said this in the moment. I go, that's a 6-6 TCU team. And I gave them too much credit because it was a 5-7 TCU team.
Well, we gave Nebraska a lot of credit.
I'm a homer. Like, what do you want from me? Like, I'm always going to give Nebraska. I'm going to err on the positive side. When I'm like predicting record, I'm probably going to err on the negative side after losses, and I'm mad about it. But this is a guy that, as you just mentioned, did not beat a winning team all year and lost 8 of his last 9 games. It's not like he finished strong. The last thing in your memory is just, L. Yeah, it's just taking tons of L's. And I got to say, one of, and this is probably very petty of me, but some of my favorite moments of watching Colorado in the last half of the season is watching Dion freeze his butt off, making sad Dion face with his hood up. He looks like the Kermit the Frog meme, like the evil Kermit meme, where he's just got the head up. And
I think that's Bernie Sanders.
No, that's with the mittens.
Oh.
I'm talking about the good Kermit, the bad Kermit.
I'm with you.
I probably enjoyed the downfall as much as he enjoyed the come up, which probably says something about me, and I'm willing to live with that.
Yeah.
But I just Sports Illustrated, you got to be better than that, man.
Well, it's just the power of the internet, right? Like that's really all this is.
Yes.
Because Sports Illustrated took notice of, hey, if I post this, not only will we get clicks right away, we'll get a ton of interaction, and this will be shown everywhere. And they got exactly what they expected and predicted, because that's just what Dion brings. Dion is president of the sports internet fan club. that is Deion Sanders. And it's funny to me because I think about other stories that the internet just kind of like runs with.
Yeah, like
and rolls with.
Self-generated internet stories.
So there was a story earlier this week, Robbie, of Corey Perry getting let go from the Blackhawks. And it came at a weird time because a week prior, it was like, hey, he's suspended. Well, I don't know if it was actually suspended, but he's on leave with the team. And there was no like medical reason for it. All it said was for personal reasons. And like Corey Perry was having a really good season. I think he had either 5 or 6 goals, 5 or 6 assists, somewhere around that.
Yeah.
And he was initially brought in just to be a veteran presence for that Blackhawks team to groom Connor Bedard, who was the number 1 overall pick in last year's draft. And this year's draft. He
was the number 1 pick in the most recent draft.
Thank you. You go back a few months, you'll see Connor Bedard's name come off the board first.
Just on a side note, real quick, I keep wanting to say Chris Perry, who was a random running back for Michigan in the early 2000s instead of Corey Perry. So if I end up saying Chris Perry, I apologize in front. Go ahead.
It's like Bruce Jenner, Chris Jenner.
That's
what's going on in Robbie's head
I can't. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So Corey Perry is brought in to be a father-like figure for Connor Bedard, get him up to speed for the NHL game. 2 weeks ago, they go on, or the moms went on the trip. I don't know if you're familiar with those trips, but it alternates every year. The moms go one year, the dads go another year. They go for a weekend, watch the guys play, hang out with them, do activities, things like that. This year was the moms trip. Well, this came out right after the moms trip had happened. So people on the internet, this is going back to what we were just talking about, self-generate the story.
Yeah, they made assumptions.
That Corey Perry.
They took circumstantial evidence and context clues and came up with this.
Corey Perry.
Not Chris Perry.
Had intercourse with Connor Bedard's mom.
Allegedly.
Like that's what the story
was. Yeah. Yeah.
People said this is why, and now we're connecting the dots.
First of all, I blame Zach Wilson for this, first and foremost.
Not only Zach Wilson, how about Delonte West, right?
I mean, Zach Wilson, we have confirmation. His ex-fiance put him on blast.
Yeah, that is true. But that again, is the power of the internet. But it's just crazy how the internet can become this cesspool for misinformation sometimes because one person says it, another person thinks it's funny. So not only do they like laugh about it, but they believe it at the same time. So now they say it too. Now you see like various sources coming out, and I'll use sources loosely.
Yeah, it's internet sleuths basically.
Coming out with like things. And one of the most like well-known individuals in like the hockey world on Twitter is Incarcerated Bob. Normally he gets stories right. He said it's true because he said something about somebody said this news can't be right. And he quote tweeted and said, it's true. Former NHL players just hit my DMs and said he had some extra activities with one of the moms on the trip. So now you're seeing this and people just attach that to Connor Bedard because that's who he was grooming.
Sure.
And so he's like, yep, he had sex with Connor Bedard's mom. Yep. That's what it was. And people ran with it for over a day, Ravi. Over a day. TikToks were coming out about how Corey Perry did this with Connor Bedard's mom. And come to find out, he didn't do anything with a mom on the trip.
Yeah.
He did something either with a team executive, because that's the story that came out next, was like, hey, he may have made a false move with somebody in our on the
in the
Blackhawks
organization
personnel group. And then even yesterday it came out, no, he was just plastered at some event with a bunch of sponsors, and that's why he got, pushed off. But then I'm like, okay, Blackhawks, like I can believe, like, hey, it's not the mom. It was probably this other story. But don't just come out and say this. It was about him being drunk in front of sponsors, because like everybody gets a little loosey-goosey. And even if it's wrong in that sense, like you're not going to kick a dude off the team for getting drunk around sponsors, depending on what he did.
Well,
right?
He may have cursed somebody out, or like
Maybe.
I think a lot of times, especially on the internet.
But normally, like you could probably be like, "Hey, man, I'm really sorry. I was just I was not myself. I obviously had too much to drink." But you
and I both know there's certain things that even in an inebriated state, that if you say them, there's no going back.
Yeah, but so
I don't know.
I think there's
I don't know what that
a difference
would be.
though
Yes.
when you're the player.
Sure.
Like when you're having success on the ice for your organization, which is only good for sponsors in the end.
Yeah.
So like you could probably, in this sense, get a second chance if it was a situation like that, depending on what was said.
Depending on what was said.
But normally, if I'm just making a fool of myself and I have too much to drink, it's going to be like, whatever. He's just
right.
He's one of the best. And we brought him in for this reason only. He's not going to be on the team very long.
But here's the other thing that you have to remember with sponsors, because usually you're talking about very rich people who have very large egos a lot of the time.
No doubt.
And sometimes in that scenario, when you're dealing with, especially if you're dealing with like Fortune 500 CEOs and stuff like that, or people of that level, sometimes they will make a decision based on their ego that is not their best decision for their business. And
I'm with you.
So I can imagine, and listen, it may have been inappropriate in nature still. Like he may have gotten drunk and, maybe touched somebody he shouldn't, said something he shouldn't in that sense, and that would also make sense. He may have also just popped off to the wrong person who was having a little bit of insecurity and was like, get rid of that guy or we're pulling our money. And the Blackhawks are like, hey, you're not the future. See you, bud.
That's true too.
So I think there's a lot, but I also think the internet is obsessed with sex. I don't know if you've been on the internet, but like
that is
also
true.
So like, I think
there are ways.
I think the assumption on the internet is always going to be, is going to go to sex first.
And the more I think about it, there are scenarios that could get somebody kicked off, but I think there's a little bit extra grace in those moments. Like if you hit a certain threshold, you're good.
Sure.
Like a threshold that we would hit, we would probably get let go.
Sure.
But Corey Perry would be fine if he goes
but there's
above that.
Still a threshold for him that he can't break.
If he goes above that, then there's some violations that may get hit. But it's just funny to me how the internet can just spin something and like make it be true.
Yeah. Or it's the perception of it is widespread enough that it doesn't matter publicly that it's not true.
And no joke, I'm watching this transpire and I want it so badly to be true that in my head I'm like, this is what it is. That's part of the problem.
That's why it happens, is because we want the salacious story to be true.
Because that's fun to talk about.
And let's
Corey Perry getting drunk in front of a sponsor, unless we know what was said, isn't that fun to talk about?
And speaking of not knowing what was said, tell us what Ethan Piper's mom said.
Also, disclaimer, let's not be family ruiners. Because that really could have happened.
Yeah,
here.
for
Connor
sure.
Bedard's family could have split up, and so could Corey Perry.
Let's not ruin people's family with rumors. Coming up next, we've got Tony Osborne from Omaha men's basketball.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back.
He reached the ball across the goal line as he was going to.
Sports Radio.
Ball to the far end.
No.
Ball to the far end. Moving left. Edward to the going to the turf. Milton to the line green. Touchdown, Milton. 4-yard first.
We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on the H&H Chevrolet stage. Want to set up the show for you real quick. We are efforting Tony Osborne of Omaha men's basketball coming up here in a little bit. Then we will talk to Mark Weiszer. He is the Georgia football beat writer for the Athens Banner Herald. As we preview the SEC championship game, we will continue with Travis Ryer from Bama Online, talking Alabama. Then we will have our guy Mike Sautter in for the 9 o'clock hour. He obviously covers high school basketball and Creighton and Nebraska basketball.
Which opened up yesterday.
Here.
Not Creighton.
No.
High school.
High school opened up yesterday. So he's been a busy man the last few days as well. Not that he's ever not busy.
You know who's really good at basketball?
Who's that?
And scores a lot of points, like when we talked to Tony Osborne. Britt Prince.
Yes. Yeah, good at basketball.
42 points yesterday.
I can confirm. Good at basketball.
Pretty dang good.
not too shabby. Yeah, so we'll have some basketball here for you today. Obviously, we're going to preview that SEC championship game. Andrew and I will make our picks later as well. I picked, I know you said you picked mostly college. I picked 3 college. I had 3 NFL. You can tell me if I'm crazy or not. But you know who's not crazy is our next guest on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline, our guy Tony Osborne from Omaha Men's Basketball. Tony, how are you this morning?
I'm great. How are you?
We are doing well. We appreciate you joining us, coming off of the win against Bellevue. But I want to go back a couple games to your outstanding performance against York, where you set the Omaha record for 3-pointers in a game with 9. You had 32 points. I guess when you're in a zone like that over an extended period of time for a whole game, just kind of what's going through your head and how aware are you of what you're doing from a statistical standpoint? Do you even realize it before you check out of the game?
It's a good feeling when everything you're putting up seems to go in. But that was really the first half. The second half, it was kind of, they weren't all going in like the first half.
Now, Tony, go ahead.
Statistically, I really wasn't aware of the record until one of the coaches told me that I needed one more. So that's kind of why I stayed in the game for that long. So it was a huge credit to them, and my teammates got me really good shots. So.
Well, Tony, I know you've hit 9 threes before back in high school, but you ended up scoring way more than 32 in that one. So you're not totally unfamiliar. I believe there was a 62-point performance back in your Missouri high school days.
Yeah, the 32 wasn't quite like the 62. The 62 was something I'm sure I'm never going to experience again. So it's not quite the same, but it does feel pretty good.
Tony, did you feel bad at all that record-setting 3 came with 20 seconds to go, up 40?
Oh, 100%. We had ran me 2 plays with the 5-minute mark, and I threw up 2 air balls where they were both open. So, I mean, we were trying, but it just wasn't meant to be until late, I guess.
Tony, I was going to say, it would have been nice if you just get a nice round, even 10, but the 9 will get it done for the record. Speaking of records, your record as a team, 5-4 so far this year. What have you liked about the way you guys have played so far? And what are some things you still would like to see improved as you continue on with your non-conference schedule?
I think a lot of people probably don't realize that 5-4 is a really good start for a non-conference mid-major team. So I think that's a big time step for us, moving in the right direction. I think that we do have a lot of things we can work on, but I think one thing is we really don't turn the ball over as a team. That's something we struggled with last year. I think we've done a good job of everybody who's really starting to rebound, and it'll be really, really tested when we go to Texas Tech because they'll have us in size and athleticism. So I think that'll be a good step for us. And then I think something we can improve on is probably we haven't really put it all together 1 through 12, everybody that's suited up. So I think that when that happens, that'll be the biggest step.
Tony, records, yes, individually coming for you, but also as a team. Just yesterday, the team broke the attendance record with over 5,000 fans. What does it mean not only to be a part of so many milestones that early in your career, but also what's it like having roughly 5,000 kids chanting UNO at you guys yesterday?
Oh, it's so loud you can hardly thank them there for sure, and we appreciate all the support. Absolutely, I think that's a testament to the work we're putting into is to have a lot more fans and continue to move in that direction. But those kids that they definitely enjoyed themselves, and we enjoyed having them for sure.
Now, Tony, when you get kids at a sporting event, a lot of times they don't know what team they're cheering for. And early on in that game, it seemed like both teams were getting their respective cheers. Did you notice that at all?
Oh no, I absolutely did notice that. At one point I was they might have been cheering louder for Bellevue at one point than they were for us. I think by about the 10-minute mark they kind of figured it out, and it definitely helped us. It shifted the momentum.
Well, Tony, kids don't always know what's going on, so it's all right. I wouldn't take it too personally.
Ravi's not much of a kid fan, so
yeah, I think that probably wouldn't have been my favorite game if I was playing or coaching in that one, but that's okay. I'm glad they brought some good energy for you. Tony, as we kind of look forward in the rest of your season, what are some of the goals that you and the team have put forward in terms of things you're hoping to accomplish in year 2 of Coach Crutch's tenure?
Yeah, I think be a lot more competitive in conference play. Last year we it was looking not too bad going into the conference play. We even started conference with a win, and then we're really competitive with Oral Roberts, who won the league and dominated, was undefeated. We had them on the ropes at home the second conference game of the year. So I think trying to build from that and be competitive. I think going into conference play with 8 or 9 wins would be really big for us too. So I think just trying to finish the non-con really well and then go into conference play and just take it game by game, because everybody's competitive. It doesn't matter if you're playing the best team or the worst team in the league. We got to go and compete every single night.
Tony, we'll get you out of here on this. Speaking of conference play, Omaha picked 7th in the preseason poll, less than a month away before that first Summit League match. Based on where this team is today, factoring in how things shook out last year and Crutch getting a full year of head coaching under his belt, think the progress from year 1 to year 2 is overlooked and underrated when it comes to projected finishing position in the eyes of the Summit League?
Yeah, I absolutely think it's probably a little bit overlooked, but it is understandable to put us at 7th. But they nobody's there when we're practicing and working, so I think that's something you can't look too much into. Even if we were picked first, it would mean probably the same thing. So I think it's even a little easier to play when nobody expects you. You don't have those high expectations. We can just come out and play. And knowing we're the underdog in most games. So I think that we've done a great job, especially the coaching staff has put together a great summer and fall and now in the season. So I think there will be a huge jump for us, at least I hope.
Tony, we appreciate your time. And listen, just do me a favor. Next time you're creeping up there on 7, 8, 9 3-pointers, just go ahead and hit that 10th one for me. Don't worry about it. Just get that 10th one.
I'll absolutely try. If I wouldn't throw up 2 air balls.
Hey, we all been there. We've all been there. Tony, we appreciate your time. We'll talk to you again soon. Good luck the rest of the year.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony.
That is Tony Osborne, the single game 3-point record holder for Omaha basketball. Went 9 for 17 in that game against York. Their schedule coming up. They go at Texas Tech on Wednesday, at Texas A&M Corpus Christi a week from tomorrow, and then they return home on Sunday the 17th against Stetson. If you want to go to Baxter Arena and see your Omaha men's basketball team play in person, see if you can beat some of those decibel levels that the kids reached yesterday.
I think it's awesome that they were
cheering. It's a cool
Like,
atmosphere.
not only for Omaha, but for Bellevue, because that just shows how innocent a child is.
Well, and honestly, I think they're just cheering because they're not in school.
I think the same thing. I mean, when you had the chance to go on field trips in school, it was the best thing in the world.
Just lost your minds. Coming up next, we will wrap up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me.
What's up, man?
We are live on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and we are knee-deep sifting through the portal looking for a quarterback for Nebraska, and there are a lot to choose from. Some super high-profile guys hopped in the portal yesterday. One of my favorite guys hopped in a few days ago. That's Grayson McCall. I mean, technically speaking, we're still 3 days away from anyone officially hopping in, but these are the ones who have declared. A big name one yesterday, transferring for the second time, DJ Uyunglele. He is leaving.
What?
Uyunglele.
Oh, I didn't know if you were saying Uwe Pooey.
No,
which is
that's
Indiana
IUPUI.
University, Purdue University, Indianapolis. Every time I hear say it again, I'm not going to say
Uyunglele.
Uyunglele. Where is the N?
Yeah,
one?
it's
and
it's
also,
kind of like Tungavailoa. Like there's no N in there, but you kind of like
fair. Yeah, the thing I think about with his last name,
Yeah.
and this is so dumb. Do you remember the World Cup in South Africa?
Yeah.
And whenever it would go to commercial break, it would be "We Wamba Way."
Yeah, it was the Shakira song.
Yeah.
It was the Shakira song.
That's what I think of every time I hear DJ U's last name.
So he's back in the portal for the second time. He is a super interesting. He's a super interesting guy because he's got all the talent in the world. He had some ups and downs at Clemson, but he was actually pretty good this last year at Oregon State. was better than you remember at Clemson as well. He was kind of the scapegoat for them dropping to an atrocious 11-3 last year. And then it's like, oh, they get Cade Klubnik, and it's like, oh, maybe it wasn't a DJ Uyunglele problem. And so he's in the portal now. Another one, probably the biggest one in the portal. I don't think we mentioned Riley Leonard yesterday. He appears to be headed to Notre Dame. But Dante Moore, a guy that if you're not paying real close attention to Pac-12 football, you may not have heard of. But he was the number 2 overall prospect in last year's class, a 5-star quarterback out of Detroit. He played in 10 games this year in part-time duty and kind of had an up-and-down season, was originally committed to Oregon out of high school, but as we mentioned, from Detroit. So he, you have to look out at Jonathan Smith at Michigan State. You have to look out at Michigan, obviously. And then pretty much every other blue blood in the country is going to be after him. So that's probably going to be one of your 7-figure quarterbacks. I don't think Nebraska is going to be in on Dante Moore.
Wouldn't hate it.
I would not hate it.
Although got a lot of eligibility left.
I will say he is immensely talented, probably less of a sure thing than some of these other guys.
I would agree with that too because of his youth.
Youth, and there were some, he did throw 9 interceptions this year compared to 11 touchdowns, but super talented, right? Obviously, you would take a chance on a guy like this if he wanted to come there. Like if he's like, I'm all in on Nebraska, like, let's go. You'd be like, yeah, sure, let's do this.
I'd pay the money and say, hey,
absolutely.
Come on over.
But
because those numbers will go down.
Yeah.
The more game experience
the interception numbers will go down. But like compared to a guy like Riley Leonard or Will Howard, where you've got multiple years of starting, where you're like, hey, I can feel pretty confident that this is a guy that I can feel good about. Dante Moore is probably more of one of those guys that Rule was talking about, where you say, hey, it's that second year after the transfer that these guys really pop. It's not a lot of times it's that first year where you're like, oh man, this guy's setting the world on fire. It's the Bo Nix and Michael Penixes of the world where you're looking at and saying, hey, this dude is really, really something here. Now, obviously, you have exceptions like Caleb Williams last year winning the Heisman in his first year at USC, but Dante Moore has that type of ability, a Michael Penix or a Bo Nix, and maybe even physically a little bit more talented than those guys, but he is a little bit more of a gamble than some of these guys like Will Howard or Riley Leonard, where you look at and say, hey, I have a pretty good idea what I'm going to get from this guy.
Now, with Dante Moore, it's interesting because, yes, the Oregon connection is big. But
he decommitted for a reason.
Yes. I don't know if the reason is as simple as, hey, UCLA was going to offer me like more money.
Yeah, sure. And it could be.
It could be as simple as, Bo Nix was going to get the job and UCLA said I could play right away.
Sure. Absolutely.
But it also could be, with his connection to Michigan, he may just want to go home. And, when you go to school across the country, which I did not do,
right?
But I can imagine what it's like living out of my home state and the desire to
you don't have to imagine
closer
it.
to home, right?
Yeah.
That's a real thing.
Yeah.
And that affects real people. It affected Jordy Ball. Jordy Ball
Absolutely.
Was number one pitcher in college softball, arguably the best player in college softball, and decided, you know what, instead of winning national championships consecutively, I want to go home, not only because I want to maybe do something special in my home state, but be closer to her family.
Yeah, just miss her family.
And her values are so high in terms of familial values.
Yeah.
So Dante Moore, without knowing any of his personality, that could be a huge draw too. And that's why Michigan State could be a perfect spot because, you have a new head coach. He's looking for a quarterback. They just had 2 enter the portal, but you also have the big school there in Michigan. And
JJ McCarthy's going to be moving on.
You're watching a team that's probably going to compete for the national championship this season.
For the 3rd year in a row.
Dante Moore, if he wants to compete,
could start right away.
Start right away. That's a spot for you.
Yeah.
UCLA is not going to compete for a national title next year. They might not compete for a national title in his eligibility window. at UCLA. Now, could they, if he became the next big thing, a superstar? Sure. He could be like Michael Penix and get Washington in the running.
But here's the other thing about Washington that we sort of forget. They were in the college football playoff not that long. I mean, the college football playoffs only existed for 10 years. So, of course, it wasn't that long ago if they've been in the college football playoff. UCLA has never been that school. Like, you can even look at Michigan State. Michigan State was in the college football playoff. Like, those two schools do have a history of being successful at that level, and UCLA just doesn't, right? Even without a Michael Penix, even after the Mike D'Antonio era at Michigan State, this is a totally different situation where there is proof of concept there for those schools to go and compete for a national title, even if it's not going to Michigan.
So as I look up and down the list, because I'm trying to go through our comment section, which we appreciate. Travis Squared and TK always chiming in, but Travis Squared doing most of the work on the back end here in terms of current NIL money for DJU, which is $625K. The reason I think it's that low is because he was tailing off at Clemson. So when he went to Oregon State, he wasn't as
hot of a commodity
desired.
Yeah.
Now he's getting to a point where he is, so that NIL dollar will go up. And especially for Dante Moore, he'll get paid as well. But in terms of realistic options for Nebraska, because you can dream, right? Which, oddly enough, Dante Moore went to Martin Luther King High School. You can dream for those 5 stars, those 4 stars, those that have a lot of eligibility left, those that would be a, hey, win now approach guys. But that's not the percentage of Nebraska securing one of them is low.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if there is somebody in the portal, you mentioned Grayson McCall.
Yeah.
Who you think is a realistic option. If it's not Grayson McCall and it's somebody else in the portal, who is it for you that's like, okay, he's deserving of the 7-figure mark, but he's also somebody that fits, because that's what Nebraska is all about. They're about fit right now, because there's going to be more that come in. There's going to be more that commit.
Yeah.
But right now, as of today, if this was the spread you're choosing from, who's the realistic option for you?
So we're taking like Will Howard out of the equation.
I would take Will Howard out of the equation because from what I've seen and what I've heard, he's going to end up at a program that's in a better state right now
type of situation
than Nebraska.
Fair. I actually don't know how unrealistic DJU is, because unless he wants to stay on the West Coast and be, he's a West Coast guy originally, I believe. I might just be assuming that because of his last name, but I believe he actually is from the West Coast or Hawaii. But he is, unless he is intent on staying on the West Coast, I do think a guy like that, who does technically have 2 years of eligibility left, I believe, is a somewhat realistic option on the high end. But a guy that I look at as more realistic, somebody in Nebraska's range, is, I look at a guy like MJ Morris. He's a guy that had a Nebraska offer. That's a transfer from NC State. He's a guy that had a Nebraska offer coming out of high school in 2022, hasn't played a ton in his time at NC State, but he's a guy that kind of fits that Matt Rule profile of multiple years, still can develop. Obviously, there was some level of interest in Nebraska on the front end of his recruitment. That's a guy where I look at and it's like, hey, he's probably not a 7-figure guy. You probably don't have to break the bank for him, but there is still a talent level there that I think you have a chance to develop him into the type of quarterback you want to have without kind of necessarily playing that portal game that Rule seems to be a little hesitant to get involved with.
All I know here, Ravi, is there's a lot of 4 stars available, and there aren't that many schools out there that are in need of starting quarterbacks to the amount of 4-stars you see in the portal right now.
Which MJ Morris was a 4-star coming out of high school, according to our 24/7.
And you know, that's not to say that one of these guys won't join somebody else at a university that already has a starting quarterback and compete for a job.
Absolutely.
But more times than not, when you go to the portal, you want to start wherever you go next.
Coming up next, we've got Mark Weiszer. He's going to preview Georgia for us in that SEC championship game here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Touchdown by Green. Touchdown to Hurrdat. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Ball's on the far hash. We're moving left. Edwards in the backfield with Beck. Give it to Deshaun. Daylight. And a touchdown. touchdown. He reached the ball across the goal line as he was going to the turf. Make the huddle fast. Milton in the backfield. Snap it to Beck. Hand it to Kendall. Big hole. Big block by Green. Touchdown, Milton. 4-yard burst.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers with me as well. We're on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and we are joined now by Mark Weiszer. He is the Georgia beat writer for the Athens Banner Herald. Mark, how are you this morning?
Doing well. How are you guys doing?
We are doing well. We appreciate you joining us. I know it's a little unusual to be talking to Nebraskans at this time of year, but we appreciate you you joining us here on the show as we kind of go through the pertinent players in the college football playoff scenario. It would be malpractice of us not to talk to the two-time defending national champions who are, oh, by the way, still currently undefeated. You know, Mark, I know a lot of people, myself included, thought early in the season this Georgia team had taken a step back and they appeared beatable, but they weathered that portion of the schedule and now look as good as anybody in the country. Is that how you process this season up close and personal, or how have you looked at the development of this team from week 1 to now?
You know, there's been a couple different ways to look at it. I mean, I don't think that they are as dominant a team as you saw, maybe last year or the year before, but they don't have to be. They have to be the best team, for this season. And it really is depending game by game. I mean, there's been a kind of an unusual occurrence, which is the other team jumping ahead of Georgia in a lot of these games. And Georgia giving up, I think it was 5 straight first possession touchdowns to the opposition. But, there's no panic when this team goes behind. And then some games in particular, some of their biggest games, the Ole Miss game, the Kentucky game, the Tennessee games that kind of were a little bit hyped up. I mean, Missouri game, you can almost include in that. Georgia, really looked like their best version of themselves. They were hitting on all cylinders. Missouri, we found out, is one of the best teams around. I guess they're maybe top 10 this week in the college football playoff rankings. And that was a closer than expected game. But besides Alabama, Missouri might be the 3rd best team in the SEC. But this Georgia team certainly, is capable of three-peating and just a little bit different, more offensive oriented, not as dominant on defense.
Mark, speak to how wild the three-peat actually could be for this program, because it's not like Georgia was competing for titles until Kirby Smart pulled up and told everyone to hold his beer. Now the Dogs are lifting trophies, sending guys to the league like it's their job. How did Georgia rise to the top and become the kings of college football? Like, what do you think was the moment when everything just clicked?
Kirby Smart took over a very good program, but one that hadn't been able to crack through and get to a college football, championship game. I mean, they were 5 yards short in 2012 against Alabama in the Georgia Dome. They had beaten, if they had had a touchdown on that last play instead of a deflected pass that got caught short of the goal line, the chances are they go and roll over Notre Dame like Alabama did. Kirby Smart has taken it up another level from Mark Richt, who, won 10 plus games, pretty much, averaged that much. And this is a different deal. I mean, he implemented Alabama's, a lot of what they did there, what he learned from Nick Saban through, 9 seasons there, and has gotten the financial support. If there's a facility that needs to be built, Kirby's going to get it here, and they're recruiting, very aggressively and relentlessly, and you stack top 3 recruiting classes on top of each other year after year, and you develop players like Alad McConkey or Stetson Bennett that aren't 5 stars. You're going to be a championship caliber program.
Mark, I'm curious because there's been a lot of former Saban assistants that have had mixed amounts of success as head coaches once they've left Tuscaloosa. And it's, if I'm remembering correctly, Kirby Smart was the first one to win at a super high level after leaving Alabama. What makes Kirby Smart different than a lot of these other guys that just maybe weren't able to figure it out? How was he able to replicate that success from Alabama?
he's only 47 years old now, and he has 2 national championships. Nick Saban won a lot of national championships at Alabama, but he didn't get his first there until 2009, and he was older than Kirby then.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kirby learned, and he ran the defense. I'm sure, as he got further and further into his Alabama, tenure, that Nick Saban, loosened the reins, and it became more and more Kirby's defense. So, it's interesting if you look at Alabama's kind of dip, without Kirby, people look at it as the kind of a changing of the guard. How much did Kirby have to do with what Nick Saban's success is? Now, of course, Bama goes out tomorrow and beats Georgia. That changing of the guard will have halted a good bit, and Alabama will look, like another equal of Georgia. But Kirby Smart's the son of a high school coach, successful. He grew up, in this game, and it's been his kind of life's work to a certain extent. I mean, he was an all-SEC safety, graduated from the business school at Georgia, so it's got a lot of good qualities. And just the focus of if he wins the national title number 3, you're going to hear that night or the next morning what he's thinking about with the transfer portal or his next recruiting class. I mean, he doesn't spend much time soaking them up. He's looking for what's next.
Mark, you mentioned these, stacking these recruiting classes and this immense amount of talent that they've been able to accumulate at Georgia. But then you also mentioned kind of the anomaly there in Stetson Bennett, which that quarterback position at Georgia has been one of the stranger things under Kirby Smart, where they pretty consistently bring in a super high level guy. But you have a guy like Justin Fields transfer out. You have Stetson Bennett beating out these much higher rated recruits. How much of that is, I guess, how and why did that happen, I guess, is the real question.
Kirby inherited Jacob Eason, a 5-star that Mark Richt kind of laid the foundation for, but he didn't hold on to the job for too long. He transferred out when Jake Fromm, a high 4-star, kind of won the job when Eason got injured. JT Daniels transfers from Southern Cal, and everyone was waiting for him to be ready to go after his knee injury that kind of limited him until the fourth to last game of that season. But then when Daniels had his own injuries, Stetson Bennett played himself into the position and didn't give it up. And, it took a long time for Georgia's fan base and even the coaching staff to really believe that Stetson Bennett was the kind of guy that could win them a championship. And once he did, he did it again a second time. And, this year it's Carson Beck, a guy that, kind of has bucked every trend. He's a 4th-year guy that didn't start a game until his 4th year of college, which doesn't happen anymore. I mean, those guys are in the transfer portal, and now he's kind of stepped in seamlessly with the new coordinator, and could be playing. He plays a different game than Stetson Bennett. He's not going to be as athletic with his feet, but great. He can make every throw, and is a winner. Really has command of the offense and has a lot of confidence.
Mark, let's talk about some of those key pieces for the Bulldogs and run us through the injury report for this game in particular, especially the presences of Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey. How necessary will it be for them to suit up in this one if Georgia wants consistent success on offense?
That's a good question. I mean, they have found ways to win games without key guys week after week. Now, not as many as are kind of on the questionable list now. I mean, Brock Bowers warmed up against Georgia Tech. I think if it wasn't the SEC championship game, he would have played. But, they knew that they had enough talent to get through that game. I expect he would be playing, and, I don't know if he's going to get his normal 55, 60 snaps. He's coming off, that high ankle surgery, and he came back for a couple games and has had some soreness. Ladd McConkey has really missed about half the season between a back injury and an ankle injury. He might be more of a guy that you can only get in for about 15 snaps tomorrow. But, a guy like Dylan Bell is kind of pushed down the depth chart or pushed down the amount of targets he gets when those guys are available. But, he makes a lot of plays as a kind of a fill-in a running back when they had some injuries there. Made a great catch on the sideline last week against Georgia Tech, threw a touchdown pass at Tennessee. They have Oscar Delp, another good tight end behind Brock Bowers. Marcus Rosemary-Jack Saint can show up in games and make big catches. So, Ra Thomas is a Mississippi State transfer that's been dealing with a foot injury. He might be the furthest from being available. Then the other guy was Tate Ratledge, an offensive guard, who they have enough guys on the offensive line where, whether he can go or not, I imagine he'd be available. But, like Amarius Mims came back from ankle surgery and was ready for a couple games, but they didn't put him out there because they had other guys that were just a little bit healthier and ready to go. So, Georgia can use everyone available against Alabama. They could probably still get by if they're missing one or two of them. I don't think missing Bowers and McConkey together would be ideal.
We're talking with Mark Weiszer. He is the Georgia beat writer for Athens Banner Herald. Mark, as you look at this Alabama team, eye test definitely tells you this is the best team that Georgia will have faced all year, certainly the most talented, even though there was a couple other teams in the same ratings range as Alabama at the time that Georgia played them. What are you expecting to see from this Alabama team that's going to challenge Georgia in a way that they haven't been challenged yet this year?
I don't know if it's that they haven't been challenged with the quarterback run and the dynamic nature of Jalen Milroe. It's just probably not to the level that he can do it. I mean, last week, Haynes King of Georgia Tech, the Texas A&M transfer quarterback, he ran for a couple of touchdowns, in the red zone. And Georgia just had a hard time. They're missing Jamon Dumas-Johnson, probably their best inside linebacker, and they have a couple of freshmen that are in there that are very talented, but don't have the kind of experience. Against Auburn, their quarterback ran for about 65 yards down the sideline. So they've had issues, and Jalen Milroe, is very special with his ability to either scramble or on design runs or just sit in the pocket and really find his open receiver. So, it's going to be interesting, if they spy him with a player or what they do. But, Jalen Milroe is going to make his plays. It's just a matter of what else gets going. I know Alabama's top running back, McClellan, is maybe doubtful. And they don't have the type of wide receivers that they've had in past years. So, Georgia might be the more explosive offensive team in this one.
Now, Mark, is there a worry at all Georgia could be knocked out of the college football playoff if they take a loss on Saturday, with knowing what any scenario could bring?
Certainly. I mean, there's a possibility that Alabama wins and the SEC gets shut out entirely. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think it would be hard to obviously keep Alabama out of the playoff if Georgia's going in. So an Alabama win probably puts Alabama at fourth in the pecking order, and Georgia could be on the outside looking in, depending, what happens with Texas, what happens with Florida State. They are not a lock to get there, unlike the last couple of years, because of just the nature of about 8 different teams that are kind of in that mix. Georgia now a tight loss, if it's an incredible 35-34 Alabama wins, something like that, I think there's a possibility that both these teams get in. It just remains to be seen how things shake out this weekend.
All right, Mark, I'm not going to ask for a score or anything, but if there's a couple keys for Georgia to come out on top on this game, what would those keys be?
I'll give you a score because I already put it up on our website.
Oh, beautiful.
Nice.
Perfect. I love it.
I got Georgia 31-24. I think, what's really been helping Georgia offensively while they've been dealing with all these injuries to their skill players on the outside is Kendall Milton running the ball at, the best he's ran it. In his career. He's a guy that's dealt with a bunch of injuries, but really has taken a lot of runs to the second level, has really broken a lot of tackles, been a physical runner. And Alabama has, given up some rushing yards against Auburn last week, some other times this year. So I think that's an advantage for Georgia if they can get Kendall Milton, continuing on that pace. And, I think Alabama, I think Georgia's going to score their points. So, if nobody has scored on Georgia more than 23 points this season, and there's the difference. I think Georgia's defense, while not what they've had the same couple of seasons, I think they will be the best defense that Alabama has faced, and that's why I got this thing 31-24.
All right, Mark, we'll get you out of here on this. Let's change gears just quickly and talk Fran Brown for a moment. We're big coaching carousel guys on the show. We know a little bit about his work just because of his connection with Matt Rule. But how exciting is it to see him finally get his shot at a school like Syracuse?
Yeah, it's a great fit, kind of outside the box thinking for the athletic director there. Big time ties to the Northeast, a relentless recruiter. Only spent 2 years at Georgia. It's kind of weird to have a position coach go to become a head coach, but Sam Pittman had some success at Arkansas in his first few seasons, not as much this year. Looks like a good hire. It would be a loss for Georgia on the recruiting trail. I think Fran's the number one rated recruiter by the 247 kind of recruiting coaching rankings. And it's a member of Kirby Smart's coaching tree, but like you said, it's more Matt Rule. He was with him at Temple. He was with him at TCU. A New Jersey guy going to upstate New York is a good fit for the Orange.
Mark Weiszer from Athens Banner Herald. Mark, we appreciate your time and enjoy covering the game this weekend.
All right, should be a good one. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
That's
Mark.
Mark Weiszer from the Athens Banner Herald. Good
Question.
stuff there from Mark.
So I heard this morning driving in on 590. The national folks were talking about if you could only watch one conference championship game this weekend, like, hey, the radio is out, the TV is out, all like the internet is down, but somehow, some way, you got to choose the one game that you could watch. What would it be?
I mean, that's pretty easy for me. It's Washington, Oregon. That's
Friday night's game.
Tonight's game. That's the best one to me.
Because Bama and Georgia is what most people would say is the best game.
That's second for me
because of how much closer the spread is with the
I think that
talent that is on the field.
I think that spread in Oregon Washington is just asinine. Like, I think it's so dumb.
So honestly, I think it's a trap. I think Oregon will actually cover it.
You think so?
Because Vegas wants you to choose Washington plus 10.
Sure.
This is the ideal trap game. Like if you were reading a chapter in the what not to do when you're sports betting, you'd get to this page and be like, don't bet on Washington. Because why in any world would Washington, as the number 3 team in the country, undefeated, already beat Georgia once this year, even if people want to claim Oregon. What did I say again? Georgia?
That's what we're just talking to Georgia.
It's talking Georgia. Already beat Oregon once this year, even if those want to argue that Oregon was the better team in that game. Who
Scoreboard.
won? Who won? It was Washington. That you're 9.5, 10-point dogs.
Yeah.
Like that right there is a trap.
Well, I don't want to spoil our picks for later because we will get to those. But
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. What's up, Shane?
I was just going to say, being my favorite weekend this weekend for sports, you have 4 games in a row that you're going to want to watch. I mean, you got tonight's game, you got tomorrow's game with Texas, then you got the SEC championship, then you got the Big Ten championship. After that, out of those 4, Big Ten championship's probably the 4th. So any of the other 3.
The Big Ten championship, I'd rather watch the Conference USA game than the Big Ten championship.
Listen, I'm watching SMU Tulane before I'm watching, which I love. SMU Tulane. Let's go, baby. But
you don't think it'd be close?
Which one?
At all?
Like, Michigan?
Yeah, I mean, you don't think
they're going to shut them out. They're going to shut out Iowa's not scoring a point.
They're not scoring a point?
Not scoring a point. Iowa can't move the football, and J.J. McCarthy won't make a mistake that is costly enough for that defense to turn it into 6.
Yeah.
He just won't.
Yeah.
So the primetime game is trash.
Well, don't worry. You've got Florida State, Louisville in primetime too, so you can switch over. You'll be all right.
Good.
Let's just put it this way. In my multi-TV setup, Michigan-Iowa will be the game that has no sound on it. That's what we're going to do there. But no, for me, listen, I think this Oregon-Washington game is going to be way closer than people think, way closer than Vegas thinks. I am not buying into this narrative that Oregon is significantly better than Washington. We've seen this
in the trap.
Don't
place the bet, people.
We've seen this all year. Washington has been doubted and underrated against a bunch of teams this year, and they still get it done.
But if we know anything about the underrated team, it always catches up to them at some point, whether it's in the college football playoff or not.
Which is where I think it will catch up to Washington if they're depending on how this plays out.
So you're giving them an extra week.
Yeah, I do, because I think they know how to beat Oregon. They at least know how to be in the game.
Well, they did beat Oregon,
right?
Once, so they do know how to.
And they know how to be in the game with Oregon, right? Like I think you might see if they end up playing in Alabama or a Georgia that they get the TCU treatment. Maybe not to the same extent, but kind of what we've seen there in the past. I don't think Oregon's going to do that to Washington because of the familiarity there. They know they know what to expect and how to deal with it. And also, Michael Penix is that good. Like, Michael Penix is that good that their defense, and listen, that's not to take anything away from Bo Nix because he's that good also. But Oregon's defense isn't stopping Michael Penix. They might still win that game, but it's not going to be because Michael Penix got shut down.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be, hey, they made just enough plays to win that game. I don't think it's going to be the 10. I'm not going to give away my pick yet, but 10 is too many. That is too many points.
I'm with you. I would choose Oregon, Washington.
That's my favorite game of the weekend.
It is one of mine too.
Yeah.
I think Alabama and Georgia, if we polled 100 people, if this was Family Feud,
oh sure, yeah, yes.
Alabama, Georgia would be the number one answer.
And it's my 2, but I agree. The general public probably puts it first.
Then you would have Oregon. Then yes, Shane, you would have. I would say you'd probably have Florida State, Louisville. Then Texas, Oklahoma State, just because, again, we're talking about a giant point spread from Texas to Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
And if you really have any interest in the college football playoff, the Florida State game
is a must.
Well, not just that, it can really decide who's in and who's out.
Absolutely. It's a must watch.
So that is why they get the edge over Texas, even though Texas can also decide who's in, who's out. But Florida State is like the one that if they lose, they're of course out. But if they win, I still think they could be out.
I think there's a scenario, but here's the problem with Texas is even if they win, it guarantees nothing. Florida State, I know you don't think it guarantees them anything either, but it is more of a chance for them to make it if they win than if Texas wins. Texas still needs some help, right? They need Alabama to win. They need Oregon to win. They still need some help to get into that position. But and Florida State is a much smaller point spread as well, so you're probably going to end up having a better game there. I don't necessarily expect Oklahoma State to put up a big fight here. Like, it might be close early, but I think Texas, with what they have on the line, is going to be able to get up for this game and take care of business.
I'll be quite honest with you. Oklahoma State shouldn't even be here. The only reason Oklahoma State is in this game is because they got the win against Oklahoma earlier this year.
It should be
Oklahoma, Texas.
Yeah, it should be a rematch of the Red River rivalry, which I hate saying because there's too many R's and L's. So I'm going to say it slow and stupid every time. But we can all agree, Michigan, Iowa, the least interesting game of the day. And I am putting that behind Tulane and SMU.
So that's hot garbage.
Hot garbage.
Shoot, I'd rather watch the MAC.
I literally am more excited about watching Liberty and New Mexico State because I love Jamie Chadwell. Somebody hire my guy, Jamie Chadwell. Duke, I'm looking at you. Hire Jamie Chadwell.
Well, speaking of coaches that need to be elevated from Group of 5 to Power 5, watch the Sun Belt Championship game.
Ooh.
All I'm saying is check out a little Troy football. They are 5.5-point favorites. And John Summerall has been super successful early on in his Troy career. Expect to see his name getting tossed around, if not this season, next season.
Sun Belt, more like Fun Belt. One of our other guys, James Madison, Kurt Signetti just got that Indiana job. We'll see him up close and personal in the Big Ten. Coming up next, I have a super stupid question to ask Andrew here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I am about to ask Andrew a very dumb question, but you know what is not stupid is making sure that your hands are on the wheel, eyes are focused straight ahead. As a driver, you have one job, and that is to drive. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Don't get distracted by stupid questions from your co-host while you're driving. That is the most important thing.
All I do is think about stupid things while I'm driving, so that actually fits my mantra.
Yeah, you got to focus up, my guy. So here's my stupid question, okay?
Hit me with it.
I am rummaging around on the internet yesterday because that's what one does when you host a daily radio show and you're like, what should we talk about tomorrow?
Reddit is one of my best friends.
Reddit, Twitter, all the places where dumb ideas go on the internet, which is, to be fair, most of the internet, as we talked about earlier today. But I ran across this, I think it's called Midwest versus Everybody Twitter account. Nice. And they tweet a lot of Midwestern-y things that speak to me as someone who's born and raised here in Omaha, Nebraska. And one of the things that they tweeted out yesterday was something to the effect of, Midwestern drivers for real have PTSD about potholes because they'll see a crack and swerve like they're trying to avoid, like they're driving down the roads of Baghdad and they're trying to avoid the craters, right? And I thought about this and I was like, it's kind of like when quarterbacks kind of start seeing ghosts in the pocket a little bit. Because you know me, I always equate things to stupid sports things. And so I text you last night and I go, hey, what's the everyday equivalent of a quarterback seeing ghosts in the pocket? And you're like, what are you talking about?
Well, I'm like, you have me thinking, but you got to lead me a little bit further.
Lead me to the water, Ravi. We need a little bit more here. So I gave you the pothole example. We kind of went back and forth a little bit. And so I asked you this because we didn't complete the assignment because we like to leave some things to be surprised on the air here. What did you come up with that is like because if you're a quarterback, you get hit a couple times, maybe you start dancing around a little bit, you start leaving the pocket before you have to, you've got a clean pocket and you take off running anyway because you're kind of seeing ghosts a little bit. You don't trust your eyes and you get a little paranoid about what's happening around you. What are some of the things that you came up with in everyday life that sort of mimic that feeling?
Well, I'll tell you this. First, I want to side with Midwest drivers for a hot sec. And when I say a hot sec, I'm going to get on the train and then I'm getting right off because I'm going to tear down a Midwest driver here too. As somebody that has popped numerous tires from either hitting a pothole or swerving away from deer that just happen to be running through the road, I don't knock people too much for trying to avoid that pothole because it is such an inconvenience whenever you pop a tire.
It can rearrange your axle. It can tear your like I've seen some aggressive damage done by potholes. So I get it. But it's more like, okay, you see the pothole, yes, you avoid it. But now it's like, oh, you see a little shadow on the road and you're like, oh no, I got to get out of the way.
I'll tell you what though, Midwest, and here's where I'll come back to reality, planet Earth. Midwest drivers are horrible.
Little rough.
Omaha drivers,
pretty bad.
I know you guys are all listening to the show right now. We appreciate you.
We love you.
And maybe this doesn't apply to you and you can decide if it does or it doesn't, but Omaha drivers are horrible. St. Louis drivers are horrible. Midwest drivers entirely are just bad. Now, you could go to Chicago and be like, yeah, Chicago drivers are horrible too. They're bumper to bumper. There's horrible drivers everywhere.
Yeah.
But I experienced the Midwest drivers.
Yeah.
So that's why I settle with Midwest drivers are bad.
We're always biased towards the thing that we're in the middle of, whether positively or negatively. I will say this, and I've only driven in Chicago a handful of times. Chicago traffic is terrible. I don't think Chicago drivers are terrible. I think they know what they're doing. Like, I think they're very aware of like, hey, this is what it is. We're going to be bumper to bumper. Everybody be chill. Like, yeah, you're going to have some outliers, but compared to here's
I don't know if anybody's ever chill in traffic.
Well, yeah, chill relatively. We're grading on a curve here. Because here's what I think happened in Omaha, right? Not that long, like within my lifetime and within my driving lifetime, the traffic in Omaha has gotten dramatically worse. So you have a bunch of people in Omaha who are used to driving around a city that didn't used to have this type of traffic, and now all of a sudden you do. And it is not something they were prepared for. They did not have a Corey Perry grooming them for success as us being the Connor Bedard drivers of the world. And hopefully, never mind. I won't go any further with that metaphor. But I think that's the problem in Omaha is that the city and the traffic of the city kind of caught up with the size of the city at some point. And most people on the road, myself included, did not learn how to drive in that level of traffic. Chicago has always been that. And so it seems like those people know what they're doing. Now, to be fair, I think most drivers everywhere are terrible. Like, I think that's the truth of it, is people are they're distracted. Like our guys.
And everybody else is terrible, but you're great.
Yeah, I'm the best driver ever. No, but like our guys at the NDOT, they do a lot of the things they're not supposed to. They're not focused. They got people talking to them. They're looking at their phone.
People with Texas license plates do suck as well, Travis, who just chimed in. He said Dallas would absolutely traumatize Midwest, but just any Texas license plate traumatizes
I've
me.
been in Houston extensively. I can't speak to Dallas as much. I've been in Houston extensively. Like, they rise to the top of the bad drivers list. They are brutal.
Well, the other thing Travis says is you shouldn't swerve to miss a deer. That's more dangerous. And I completely agree. What people tell you is don't swerve away because you could flip your car, do whatever. But
I'm just saying, in my car versus a deer, I might end up with some damage, but I'm winning.
Yeah, but I want people to realize this because you don't know until you experience it. When you're going on the highway, you're traveling 77 miles an hour because I drive over 70.
How dare you?
I know. A human instinct is to miss whatever's in front of you.
Absolutely.
In any situation, a ball gets thrown at you, you're ducking.
Yeah, if you just kind of see something like out of the corner of your eye, you're not expecting it, or it kind of flashes in front of you, your first instinct is to boom, get out of the way.
It's like a foul ball that goes back to the screen, right? You're sitting first row. What do you do when you see a foul ball come back to the screen? You move because your instinct is, hey, this thing's coming at me really fast. I need to get out of the way.
That's why the Kobe no flinch moment against Matt Barnes is one of the most iconic moments of his career. He doesn't do anything, and that's the point. He just stands there, but what's up?
And so that's my only thing to say about not swerving when something's in front of you, because take deer out of the equation and put person. You're not just going to hit the person.
Right, yeah. Yes.
Just because they say, hey, you could flip your car. So, okay, going back to what you were asking, just so we can get to the point.
Yeah.
So essentially what the prompt is, it's false pressures and how you react to them.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
So
and kind of the paranoia it causes a little bit.
So there's a couple of things. There's one, and I may have mentioned this last night, but I have gum in my car at all times.
Okay.
Because there's that worry of being so up close and personal, like when you're having a conversation with somebody, that your breath is going to stink. So unless I have the gum, like, to just pop in, even if, like, because if I'm talking from me to Shane, he doesn't know if I have bad breath.
Right.
Even if I'm talking from me to you,
I can't.
It's hard to tell if, like, somebody has bad breath. It's really like if you
have to be like real close.
Yeah,
real up close
you're
and personal.
cuddling with your wife or your fiance, and you're just like, ooh.
Yeah, like, what's happening here?
Am I cuddling a dragon, or is this
got Shrek here? What's going on?
So you're sitting there on the couch, you're reaching for gum all the time?
No, it's more like when I'm going out and I'm in public.
Yeah.
So like if I'm at the grocery store, right, in the checkout line, it's like, oh my gosh, is this guy gonna judge me for having bad breath if I don't have like gum in? And so it's like those are the false pressures I think you're thinking about. Another thing I just like that hit my brain was, everybody has anxiety when they get up on like a stage to give a speech.
Sure.
And like even when you're in the crowd, you're never judging the person up there.
Not usually, no.
Like the person like goes up, but the person that is in front of 100 people, just say, is like, shaking in their boots because they're thinking, oh my gosh, all these people are judging me, which is why they say, oh yeah, imagine everybody naked. Don't ever do that. Like
that's weird. Don't be creepy.
Don't do that. That's a weird, like
it's a weird thing to do.
Weird scenario
Don't do that.
to build in somebody's mind. But it's like the false pressures of being judged.
Yeah.
When you're not like in any way being
when you're
judged.
not actually under pressure.
Right.
Yes.
Unless you're really screwing up and they're just like, what is happening? But they don't even say like, gosh.
You're not going to get like heckled,
it's
right?
Like the SpongeBob. Oh, Lord, this guy stinks. Like you're not getting that. Unless you're like a comedian and then you get a really, but drunk Corey Perry at your event that may, get dismissed from the team because of his
sponsor
actions.
dollars. One of them for me, before we hop back into real conversations with Travis Ryer here for Alabama, is I have to pee all the time. And so whenever I would have to go on a road trip, I would dehydrate myself for like at least a full day ahead of time because I was so self-conscious about asking people to pull over to go to the bathroom.
That's a good one.
And so like, and most people don't care. Like you have some people that are like really weirdly like aggressive about like, we have to get there at this time and whatever. But most people are just like, yeah, that's fine. It's cool. No big deal. Cause like, it's not every 10 minutes, like every couple hours, right?
It's still
usually
like
not a big deal.
You're inconveniencing.
I'm so
them.
self-conscious
That's how
about
you
it.
Feel.
That's my chasing ghosts. Coming up next, we got Travis Ryer, Alabama football.
We will be back. will be back. We will be back. Radio. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Bama down by 4. Here's Milrow, looks long, trying to find a man behind the defense. It's caught, and here goes Jermaine Burton all the way. Touchdown, Alabama. A 68-yard play. That's what you were looking for.
We're wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We're on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, and ESPN Tri-Cities as we continue previewing championship weekend and talking to the pertinent players in the college football playoff race. We bring in Travis Ryer from Bama Online covering Alabama football. Travis, how are you this morning?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Good. You're doing better than we are because you're still playing football. So that that's a good place to be. And
they're always playing football.
I'd be lying. Yeah,
I can still remember Alabama being in that spot, believe it or not. I've covered this team since 2003. So I think that was a 4-9 in Mike Shula's first season. So there's been some pain involved.
I understand, and I remember when Nebraska was Alabama. So it's I think we've been on both sides of the equation. Back in 2003, was that like the Freddie Millens team?
Gosh, that may have been a year after Freddie.
Okay.
The year after Dennis Francione bolted for Texas A&M. Okay.
How
that goes for coaches that bolt for Texas A&M, but yeah, that was a rough stretch. That was That was Brody Croyle.
Oh,
Brian
yeah.
Ayers right there. 3, 4, and 5.
That's like right after Sean Alexander or right in Sean Alexander range?
A little bit after Sean.
Okay.
You know, Sean was part of that 99 SEC championship
That's
team
right.
before going on to the NFL. But, yeah, that was, again, an era. Well, you know who else you had was D'Amico Ryan.
Oh, that's right.
Now the head coach of the Houston Texans.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
D'Amico was a great player. And really that 2005 Alabama defense, because of what came after it with Saban, still doesn't get the props, the recognition I think it deserves because it was really good.
Well, Travis, I'll stop walking down memory lane with you here. I could just name old college football players forever. So we'll move on to what's actually happening now. Alabama obviously kind of took that loss to Texas, and it seemed like for a while people sort of forgot about them, but they have kind of sneakily been playing some of the best football in the country for a little while now. What changed for Alabama after that Texas game?
Well, I don't even know if it was after the Texas game. I think it took the next week with an even worse performance.
Oh, sure.
It was a win, but played worse against South Florida on the road than they did even in the loss to Texas and Tuscaloosa. And I think at that point, the decision was made definitively that Jalen Milroe is the guy at quarterback. It's up to Tommy Rees and this offensive staff to, make it work with Jalen, and not just make it work, but continue to incorporate and evolve with him behind center. And that's what they've done to their credit. The offensive line wasn't especially good at that point in the season either. That's another area that has made strides. They kind of stumbled into a new starter at right guard in Jaden Roberts, who has been excellent since he's jumped in there at about mid-season. And they took some lumps with a true freshman left tackle in Caden Proctor, but he has continued to improve as well. So I think mostly you look at the offensive side of the ball, and again, how Jalen has continued to progress and improve as not just a passer, but how they've incorporated more of his legs into the offense, and also his decisiveness in that area too.
Travis, how much credit does Tommy Rees deserve for figuring things out with Jalen Milroe and getting this team to a point where a win against Georgia very well could land them in another college football playoff?
Yeah, I think it probably started with Nick Saban essentially telling Tommy Rees and the rest of that staff, regardless of who you want or who you think should be the quarterback, it's Jalen. That's who we're going with. And it probably was clear to the rest of the offensive staff at that point too. But since that point forward, Tommy has continued to add and sort of complement Jalen in ways that really works with him and his skill set. And we've seen some other guys, some other X factor types like Kendrick Law at the wide receiver position. They use him almost like a Deebo Samuel, a hybrid offensive player that has helped them become more difficult to defend. Their receivers have been good. They've been consistent throughout the season. Jermaine Burton, Isaiah Bond, of course, from last week. But, throughout their rotation, they've gotten consistent play from those guys. So it really started, in my opinion, with the receivers helping Jalen. But now you're seeing Jalen help his receivers because of that threat of his legs. But he's doing a good job of maintaining passer status for as long as he possibly can before making decisions. And boy, that really puts defenses in a tough spot.
Travis, let's talk about the madness that could ensue if Alabama wins, Texas wins, and Florida State wins. Is there any bone in your body that thinks an SEC champion won't be featured in the college football playoff? And the reason I ask that is with Alabama being 8, Georgia should slot out. Michigan would move to 1. Then you're either going to have Washington or Oregon. Is the ACC undefeated champion out? Is Texas out? And if Texas is out, how are they out and beat Bama? Like, how do you process the madness?
Yeah, it's the worst nightmare, I think, for the committee. Obviously, Georgia wins Saturday. That makes everything easy, at least in regards to Alabama. If Alabama wins, that is, that's sort of ground zero situation for those folks. So, It is. Even if Alabama wins with one loss, it is hard to envision the SEC being left out of the college football playoff because we haven't seen it to this point. And, you are talking about a league that has produced, spanning to even pre-CFP, 13 of the last 17 national champions in college football. And it hasn't just been Alabama and Georgia. It's been LSU. You've seen Auburn win a national championship 12, 13 years ago. So it is in a lot of ways. And, you said it earlier. I think, with Alabama after the Texas loss and then the performance at USF, a lot of folks, and I understand it, just sort of looked at Alabama as, well, we'll check back in with the Crimson Tide in 2024. I just don't know to the extent that committee members or folks out there have really circled back to check back in with Alabama. Maybe they did it last week. Maybe they checked back in and, Alabama needs a touchdown pass on 4th and goal from the 31 to beat a 6-6 Auburn team. But it would be, I'd almost not like it for the teams that do make it, because I think then the narrative becomes, is it a valid tournament? Is it a valid 14 field if you don't have an SEC team in it?
Well, Travis, if they wanted to make a pitch for their 12-team playoff being necessary, they're certainly doing it this year.
The year, isn't it? Yeah.
It's too bad we can't bump that thing up a year and get every deserving party in. But looking at this week's game against Georgia, obviously Georgia not as dominant as they were in the last 2 years, but it seems like they've improved throughout the season. Where are some areas that you think Alabama has a chance to give Georgia some problems?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of, I talk X factors, but on offense, Jalen Milroe's legs and what he can bring to that, not just on a down-by-down basis, but when you start thinking about third downs and red zone, those two areas you expect to be critical in a game like this, and that's where I think he can give Alabama an edge. Now, if Brock Bowers is healthy, then that's the Georgia version of it, or healthy enough to do what we've seen him do over the last 2 or 3 seasons. But I think that's where, Alabama, again, with what Jalen can do as a runner and a passer, not only as far as conversion plays, but explosive plays, because I think those are going to be tougher to come by. Again, when you think about Alabama's running backs this year, there's not that one guy that strikes you that way as far as the potential for 30, 40, 50-yard runs. And Georgia's got a defense that limits that anyway. Even if you do have that kind of guy, it's going to be tough. And I think the same thing for Georgia. So Milroe is the wild card in all of this. I don't want to say he has to play perfect for Alabama to win, but if the guys around him perform at the necessary level, he's got to certainly do his part. And I think it starts with trying to establish that very early in the game that, you are going to have to deal with multiple aspects with this guy if you're going to be able to get the job done against the Alabama offense.
Travis, got about a minute. Branching off of that, Alabama expected to be without their starting running back in Jace McClellan. How much will his presence be missed, and how much do you see his absence impacting the outcome of this game?
Jace is just solid. He really is. He's not spectacular. Again, between him and Roydell Williams, their top 2 backs, you're not talking about first or second day guys in the NFL draft. You're not talking about Najee Harris or Josh Jacobs or one of those kind of guys, even Brian Robinson. But both are veterans. Both were a part of 2020 national championship teams, so they've been around. They know what this game's going to entail. And I think pass protection is going to be a big part of this too. So if Jace can't go, that's something you worry about. But I think Roydell Williams is another one of those 4th-year guys that can jump in there and help handle that. So you'd love to have Jace this week, but if you don't, then I think Roydell Williams has to step up.
Travis Reier from Bama Online letting us know what's going on the Alabama Crimson Tide side of things for this weekend. Travis, we appreciate your time and enjoy covering the game this weekend.
Hey, thanks, guys.
See you, Travis.
Travis Reier from Bama Online covering Alabama football and walking down a college football memory lane with me. I appreciate his indulgence at the start of that interview as I just named random Alabama football players. Coming up next, we've got our guy Mike Sautter here of Hurrdat Sports' very own on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Oh, yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
Mike Sautter.
Yeah.
Mike Sautter.
Oh, man, you're going to put me on the spot.
Mike Sautter.
We're kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. And for hour number 3, we are on KFOR in Lincoln. We are joined now. I'm Ravi Lulla, David Rogers. We're joined now by our guy Mike Sautter, our resident. Can we get Sauter's mic? I don't have him at all.
I don't have you. There you are.
Hey,
there we go. Mike Sautter, our resident
introduce yourself
basketball guy here at Hurrdat Sports. I know you've been busy with let's start with last week because you were in Kansas City.
What was last week?
KC, baby.
Yeah, you were in Kansas City. Your Thanksgiving.
That was last week?
I think so.
Like
right? That was last week.
That was last week.
It feels like it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
That was.
Sautter wanted to forget that trip, so thanks for bringing
No, I didn't care. No, it's fun. It's fine. I just had to be with Jacob Padilla the whole time. That part sucked. The other parts, it's fine.
That's rude. Don't do that to our guy, Jacob.
Did he drive well?
Yeah. I mean, on the drive.
That's a no.
No, it's fine. No,
they made it there and back alive. That's the goal.
We are fine. I will tell you I just zoned all the way out for about 2 hours of the drive on the way back, and just like put my earbuds in and was just scrolling TikTok. I was in the TikTok hell rabbit hole.
The Twilight Zone.
Oh yeah,
I call it the TikTok Twilight Zone.
I was just like random. Nothing, because
time just evaporates. You're in there and you're like, it's been 2 hours.
I just need to kill time. He's listening to his basketball podcast. It's fine. Like, listen to a little bit of that too. Is great. Besides the Suns part. And then I was like, all right, I'm done. It's been a long haul here. Not with this podcast. I'm just saying mentally, I was done. I was over.
Need a little mental break.
That Thursday, which was Thanksgiving, was the 24th day and 22 of 24 days that I wasn't home for dinner with my family. So I was done. I was just like checked all the way out. So
for sure.
Yeah, it was fine. But no, it was a good trip. I enjoyed it. It was I saw Isaiah Stevens, my guy, Isaiah Stevens.
My guy. He is your guy.
I am.
No, you've been high on him.
Wowzers. He
really
is
good.
So good. He's so good.
Let's go back to that real quick, just because you were there. I'm curious if it looked different in the arena than it did on TV. And obviously the worst game Creighton's played all year.
Oh,
yeah. As you're watching it, what happened? Was it Creighton just ice cold? Was Colorado State locking them down that aggressively? Like, what happened?
Yeah, I think it just was they just missed shots. And a team that is built to make shots like that, like they're going to shoot a bunch of threes, and they're just built that way. They're not built. This team is not built to have a ball handler or two that just gets to the rim and gets fouled and gets to the free throw line. That's just not how they're built. So they just missed shots. I think primarily that was one. Now, you look back, one of the concerns of it is they don't have anyone that, if they're not making shots, can't, like a Nembhard, could just get to the rim, get to the line, or create for others. That's just not. But again, that's just not how this team's built.
Trey is close to that. He isn't fully that, but he's close.
Yeah.
If his mid-range is going, he can provide a decent amount of that. It just looks different than Nembhard, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. He's not the downhill driver, right?
He's more the methodical, work his way in, find a spot, turn around.
And he'll do a turnaround jumper, that turnaround like little fade jump that he has from about 8 feet.
You look just like him.
It was
pretty good. So what, in your kind of diagnosis, what can Creighton do to give themselves more of an option 2 or 3 if they're not shooting the ball well, because they don't have that hyper quick guard to get into the lane and kind of create that way. Like, I think they have some guys that are more capable than they showed against Colorado State.
Right, for sure.
Is it
like Ashworth had a huge game last night?
Yes, and did a lot more of getting into the
right. I think that's
is
something.
Is it a mindset switch as much as anything?
I think it's just they needed a little adversity, and
okay,
then they found it, and then they, now you're just.
So you're saying they weren't going to go undefeated?
No, yeah.
Well, and you know what? Let's just be frank.
There are people that believe
Colorado
that.
State. That Colorado
They're
State
good.
loss,
They beat Colorado.
Well, it's going to age well.
Yeah,
It's gonna
Colorado
age
State's
well for
good.
this team.
Yeah.
Colorado.
The way it looked is not going to age well, but the fact that they took that L is not going to kill them in the non-conference, in 3 months when we're talking about seeding and whatever.
No, it'll be fine. They're fine. Like there's
But we know this. Creighton lives and dies by the way they shoot the basketball. And so those performances, which you could see in the NCAA tournament, will always result in an L. Because they're just not built, like Sautter said, to withstand those moments.
But they also they can figure it out though too pretty quick. They're still pretty good.
So that's my question is in years past, because Andrew's right, in years past with teams, not the last couple of years.
Because you're also okay. So if Trey he'll never go 1 of 14 again from the field.
I would bet against that.
Yes. Never.
Yeah.
But if that happens,
Baylor's
you need
not
Baylor
go 3 of 17 or whatever.
And Baylor that happened. Baylor, they both missed I'm telling you, wide.
Yeah, when it was bad, it was
under the basket, no one around you layup.
I think they were 4 of 32 combined.
That's never gonna
4 of 31, something like that.
I think that's a kick the can down. That one's just man.
It's like, hey, let's try and take our lessons and flush it.
And they did. It looked like they did play good. I didn't watch the entire game. I did watch a little bit. I was in high school last night,
which we'll get to in a second.
Yeah, but it looked like they flushed it a little bit. So I think they'll be all right. I mean, you look at guys like Isaac Trout still is capable of. I mean, they love him in that.
Yeah, he was like a top 60 player in the country.
They love him in the corner, don't they?
People forget about
that. He can
that.
really shoot it.
Yeah.
I mean, Mason Miller's. I also I don't know this for a fact, but I also think the illness thing probably hit the team a little deeper than what
I thought too.
Led to believe
that looked like a team that did not feel well.
They were tired, yeah.
Which I'm not making excuses. Colorado State's good. Isaiah Stevens is awesome.
Yeah, he's so good. Gosh, he was so good against Colorado. What's today? Friday. That was Wednesday.
Yeah,
right?
Just the other night.
Oh man, I love watching him play. He is awesome, and he is 6 foot point guard, and with undersized, you play like that.
Yes, absolutely.
Be that guy. Anyway, so Sunday.
Yeah, so Sunday you've got Nebraska and Creighton coming up at Pinnacle Bank Arena.
That's gonna be fun.
I assume you'll be down there. I assume our guy Jacob will be down there as well.
I will be there.
Be covered all over Hurrdat Sports. So make sure
if Nebraska wins, there will be 8-0.
It's a legitimately huge opportunity for Nebraska. It would actually be a good win for Creighton too.
It would not tie because right now they're tied for the third best start in school history. It would be the third best start in school history. 1915, 1916, they were 9-0. 1977, 1978, Nebraska was 10-0. That is the best start in school history. Not sure they can get that far. Can Nebraska win on Sunday? Yes. Yes, they can.
Well, they're physical.
And I think I think this game is going to be really close. I don't know. The line is probably going to be under 5, I would say, for Creighton. Yeah. Just because
I was thinking right about 6.
In Lincoln.
It's in the neighborhood.
In Lincoln.
Nebraska's
undefeated, receiving votes in the AP poll. The matchup is pretty good for Nebraska.
Yeah, it's not terrible. It really isn't.
They're built.
There's been years where the matchups for Nebraska have not been great. I think Nebraska actually has some pieces to give some interesting looks to Creighton that, if you've got Mast out there and Alec and there's some size there for Nebraska that could give Creighton issues. I'm interested.
I also so Creighton plays a drop D, right?
Yeah, with Kalkbrenner.
Maskin is very capable.
Yeah, he can beat you
I like
on
his
that,
baby hook.
Right?
I'm saying he's very capable of hitting a 3 if they're dropping.
That's what I mean. He can beat you on that. So I don't know if they're going to start
put Trout
switching.
on him.
I don't know if you put Trout on him or
I would put Trout on him.
But then
I'm not the coach. I want to be very honest, but that's what I would do.
I would coach for Creighton.
No, absolutely not.
No, but no, I mean that makes sense because you probably don't want Kalkbrenner running around the perimeter all night. You want to keep him as close to the basket as possible.
Not that he's
try
not.
and pull him away. That's just that little minor cat and mouse game is going to be huge. And what do? When Juwan Gary enters the game, Alec and Gary can switch everybody.
Yeah.
Especially on the Creighton roster, he can switch everybody. So and basically everyone can switch. They're very Bryce
They're
Williams
very
can
switchable.
Yeah, Jamarcus Lawrence can switch. Everybody can switch.
Which anytime you get someone, I get those guys are switchable, but anytime you get one of the more perimeter-oriented guys switched on to Kalkbrenner, Creighton's going to have to be really good at finding that and taking advantage of that. But on the other side, they're going to have to do a really good job of making sure Kalkbrenner doesn't get left out on an island on the perimeter defensively.
Shooting the three well.
And you're going to have to make sure that you keep him where he is most effective on the floor. Because it's
How
not
do you
that
do
he's
that, though?
It's right. That's the $1 million question.
Because
that's where,
Alec is capable too.
Right.
And then again, Gary comes in for if you say Alec and then
you know what it sets up for. And I
know what it sets up for? It sets up for Sam Hoiberg and Stephen Ashworth going at each other. The listed at 6 foot
the five,
point guards
the 5'9"
that are really
point
5'2".
It's exciting.
The high school program.
Yeah.
So here's
that's just
it's Ashworth versus Hoiberg Sunday at PBA.
Well, that's going to be
Hoiberg's kind of been there.
Both of those guys.
Hoiberg's kind of been their lockdown defender guy off the
I know.
bench, though.
It's so here's what it sets up for in my mind defensively for Creighton is it sets up to throw some zone out there to keep Kalkbrenner at the rim.
Haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it yet, but you know it's something that they work on. You know it's something that they have in their bag.
3-2.
Some 3-2, some 2-3.
Could see some 3-2.
Maybe a 2-2-1 at times.
1-2-2. 1-3-1.
1-3-1 would work at times. Yeah. A lot of these are just sort of slight variations of the same thing. But Nebraska as a team, just under 35% from three. That's a good number. That's not a number.
That's almost hitting the mark.
That's not a number so high that you're like, we can't throw a zone at them, right? Yeah. If they're shooting 37, 38%, you're probably like
the metric
probably don't want to do that.
So the metric, the sweet spot is I 36 to 42. Mm-hmm. So if you're on the high end of that, holy cow, your team can really shoot the three. But if you're at 35's solid.
34 and a half's right. Yeah. Very solid.
If you're at 36 or higher, now you're like, we definitely can't zone these guys.
Yeah, you're in that team can straight out.
So they're close.
For reference, Creighton's right at 40 as a team. Right. So Creighton's on the higher end of that level.
Played one real team.
Nebraska's on. Listen, I'm just saying, I'm just comparing the stats, man.
Three. Sorry, Iowa.
Nebraska play.
The one, not half a one.
So that's
Oregon State is real not good.
You said that to the group while you're at that game. You're like, Oregon State. This is 3 minutes into the game. You're like, Oregon State is bad. I think Duquesne was better than Oregon State.
For sure. Duquesne's probably the best team Nebraska's played.
Yeah, so let's maybe not throw stones.
Duquesne's good. Duquesne's good.
It's maybe one of the only times we ever say that.
Duquesne is good.
Listen, if
this is going to be the cutout on social media, Duquesne is good.
That's the podcast title.
I'm gonna give you real truth here. Before the season, I thought, oh my gosh, Creighton is gonna beat Nebraska by 20. Then about a week into it, I was like, Creighton's still gonna win, but it'll be about probably 15, 10 to 15. Let's go with 12. And then Colorado State happened. And I was like, maybe about, 5-6. And now I've talked myself all the way into believing it is a 50-50 game. And it'll be I have no idea who's going to win, which is great. And hey, I don't care who wins. I really don't. I don't care who wins. Someone asked me last night, high school game before the game, who you got? And I looked at him. I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah, Ravi doesn't care who wins
do not. Ravi cares. Mike Sautter, don't care who wins. Never do when I go to a game.
If we revisit that line, Mike's like, I don't care who wins, go Nebraska. But who knows? This one could be close.
I will say this. My kid wore red today because they have color wars, red and blue. So, because for this game.
Yeah.
And I was like, No, I don't. I was like, I got nothing for you. Leighton, you're on your own. I'm not. She goes, who do you want to win? I go, I don't really care. And then she
You're
goes,
like, I hope they both have fun.
And then and then it was more like, well, what do you? Well, if you could choose who, this was this morning eating cereal. It was like, she goes,
what kind of cereal?
I had Lucky Charms today.
Okay.
So, she's like, if you could choose, who would you choose to win? And I said, Leighton, I'm just trying to eat my cereal. I don't know.
Right now it's getting soggy.
Leighton,
I didn't have a lot of marshmallows because you've been pulling them out of the box on your
Leighton,
own.
I slept 3.5 hours. I don't really care who wins. And it is 6:45 in the morning. Or 7. Sorry, it's more like 7:20.
I was like, I don't even care if they actually play the game. They could cancel it. It doesn't matter.
No, I do care about that. So on this,
no, it'll be fun.
We'll have a ton. Jacob will have his Creighton slant, and then I'll do my Nebraska side, and then we'll do our final thoughts after the game, which probably be a lot longer.
A little longer than normal.
Well, they're about 5 to 7 minutes when him and I are together on
Yeah.
it. But we'll probably dive a little deeper, and we might even do I might talk him into doing a post game live Twitter thing or something.
Do it.
There we go.
Why not?
We do it live on Twitter. That'd be fun.
I got a quick question for Sautter, and I hope you wanted to change directions here.
That's all right.
Real quick before you
go
change
ahead.
directions, make sure you go to Hurrdat Sports to catch all of Mike and Jacob's coverage. Hurrdat Sports on all social media. Just make sure you check that out because they will have a ton of stuff for that Nebraska Creighton game. Go ahead.
Okay, because it's a tie-in to Nebraska and Creighton. Nebraska side of things, on the high school side, you have Britt Prince, who went
That's crazy
last night.
She outscored an opponent. Anytime you can outscore your opponent, that's ridiculous.
By yourself.
And she's just ridiculous in itself. What a find! What a steal Nebraska women's basketball has with her. And then
it's not a steal. I mean, they kind of.
I mean, she could have gone anywhere, is what I mean.
She could have gone anywhere.
And so, since Nebraska stole her away from other schools, that's how I attributed it in my head.
I attribute it to they found this unheralded prospect that's going to be awesome.
Sure,
that's not true.
So
anyway, go ahead.
Was easier.
Yeah.
But then on Creighton's side of things, it was Josiah Dotzler last year that was like, hey, he was the top boys basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was the highly coveted player. Still Britt Prince this year. But on the men's side, and I bring this up too because I'm going to Brian. On the boys' side, I'm going to Brian this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Is it as simple as Amari Bynum is the Josiah Dotzler of this year, or could somebody else give him a run for the money?
He's just a junior, so the senior class is pretty much done.
No, but I mean for best boys basketball player.
Oh, he's the best prospect. I need to very much so.
There's a difference between the best prospect and the current best high school basketball.
Very much so. Yes. When I tried to explain this to people a lot when we had Hunter and Chucky and people were whatever, I said, Chucky right now is the best
school basketball
yes.
player. Hunter was the better prospect.
Correct.
Yes.
There is a difference. And it's really hard for people to think differently because they look at is box score.
Well, and it's kind of like we talked about this year with high school football, right? Like Carter Nelson is the best football prospect in the state.
Is he?
Maybe. Ratings wise, he's the best football prospect in the state. Physically, whatever. Anthony Rizak or Caleb Benning to me are the best players in the
this
state.
Year. Yes.
Not to say they aren't good prospects,
right?
Because I think they both are very good prospects.
Right. There's a difference.
That's
between,
the difference between again, production or raw talent. And
so you have Amari, who's the best prospect.
Amari's the best prospect
player on the boys' side in the state this
year, regardless
of
class.
Yeah. The best senior is Jaden Jackson.
Bellevue West.
Yeah. He's the best shooter. He's the best player. I don't know. Trayson Anderson is going to put up massive numbers. Now he had 21 and probably 12 or something against Miller North last night. I haven't seen a final box score for that yet, but he did have 21. I know that, and he was pretty dominant in the post. And playing against the competition he's going to play against this year, he should be very dominant. He should be 20 and 12, which is pretty dang good. But I think Jaden Jackson's the best player in the senior class. Senior class is a little dip, right? We don't have any. There are 2 Summit League guys. Will Cooper's going to Air Force. Other than that, it's NAI D2E stuff. So there's only handful. It's not like there isn't anyone going high major. But that Amari Bynum is crazy. His talent level is awesome. Like he is. I was practice on Tuesday at Bryan. I was just like at one point I was just like, oh my gosh. Like I was just staring at him like, you're like jaw drops, right? And you're just like, he's doing a drill shooting from the elbow or the pin. Like that doesn't, people don't really do that. And I even in the middle of the drill, I walk up to Galen Goley, head coach, and I go, hey, are you guys going to let him shoot that elbow jump? Because a lot of times, depends on philosophy. You don't want him to. He goes, HE double hockey sticks, yes. And I was like, okay, because I just counted, and he was 18 of 20 from that elbow on the left side. And on the right side, he only missed 3 shots in like a 20-some shots, right? Like
that's pretty good.
How many points?
And then he stepped back, and then he stepped back to the wing, and he made like 17 of 22. And I'm like,
from 3,
yeah, against air, right?
Sure,
that's still hard to do on air.
Yeah,
like he is so talented. He's the most talented prospect in Nebraska right now. I don't. Bryson Ball's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Got a chance to be really good. Bryson Ball has a chance to be a high major player too. Like very much so does.
Okay.
He's got South Dakota State and Omaha have offered Bryson Ball, but he's got a chance to level up that. I firmly believe he can get there. It's just not there yet. But Trace Anderson will be the most dominant as far as statistics are concerned.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between those things. But I will tell you this, Millard North last night went to Pius, won by 20, and they didn't have their starting point guard who has started for them the last 2 years. By the way, what happened those 2 years? Made the state championship game. So they didn't have their starting point guard, Eli Gaith, who's played varsity a ton of games and big games and all that. He did not play last night, and they beat Pius by 20. And if Pius is the best team in Lincoln, it's probably them or Southwest, maybe Southeast. If Pius is the best team in Lincoln, the gap is really big between Lincoln and Omaha.
Yeah.
Like real big. Last year, everyone remember, like last year, that was Lincoln is back and we're here and we're I don't know about that. Like right now, we'll find out tomorrow though. Southwest and Omaha West Side play tomorrow on Saturday at Lincoln Northeast.
Okay.
Lincoln Southwest West Side at Lincoln Northeast at like 2:30. That's a big game for like that bragging rights thing. I think West Side's the team that is getting totally overlooked right now.
Slept on?
I really do. And Prep is
don't go starting talking about West Side
also
now.
Prep is awfully good. Prep is really good. And Gretna beat Southeast by like 20 last night too.
That's our guy Mike Sautter. He will be at Lincoln on Sunday. We'll talk to you then.
We will be back.
Audio Jungle. 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 Audio Jungle.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio. I super don't have almond bark covered pretzels in my mouth. Give me a second here.
Bad timing there, Robbie.
It was my fault. I lost track of time.
You know what?
Shane told me. It's okay.
I need one of our great sponsors out there, like maybe the Beanery by chance, to bring us some of their fantastic breakfast items someday. I was listening to one of my other favorite non-sports shows,
Live Taste Test.
Yeah, non-sports shows in St. Louis. It was the podcast version because they're a morning show as well, and they had one of their partners bring in deli sandwiches for them, and I'm like, what it would be like to stuff my face while I'm doing this show. So that's the only reason why I just connected the dots.
It wouldn't be the first time I've done that.
Peppermint bark pretzels.
Man, they're good.
And they're pretzel thins too, which makes them even better.
Yeah, because you get a better bark to pretzel ratio. I'm terrible about that. I try and when I'm eating during breaks, I always think I can get one more bite in, and I almost never can. So that's what just happened there. We're on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. Speaking of our terrific sponsors, our friends over at Warhorse Sportsbook, It is time for the sports cleanup, which we're going to turn into some sports picks today. Although there are a couple things I want to clean up there as well. But just a reminder, you can go to Lincoln, go to the casino, make your sports wagers there, or in Omaha, Horseman's Park, 6303 Q Street, you can make your wagers there as well. You can bet on nearly every major sporting event. Straight bets, parlays, props, live in-game bets, all accepted. Go to warhorsecasino.com/sportsbook or get the Warhorse Casino app for all details and a full list of house rules. So before we get to our picks, Andrew, there is, you mentioned earlier.
I
don't remember if this was off air or on air. I always kind of,
my head goes a million directions, so I don't know if it was on air or off air.
I don't either. But we were talking about the Florida State Louisville game and how Tate Rodemaker is in the concussion protocol.
Yeah, that was off air.
So you were making your picks for your league that you do. I was making picks for our show, and I do a kind of friends pick'em league as well. And I think we were both thinking, yeah, we think Florida State wins this game. It's only -1.5. Tate Rodemaker's played pretty well in the last couple of games. And then it comes out there, and then you tell me, you're like, hey, I think he's still in concussion protocol. And so we're kind of looking at it. And then terrible news for me.
Oh no.
I'm probably being paranoid. Maybe I'm chasing ghosts like we talked about in the 8:30 hour. But the name Brock Glenn is trending.
Uh-oh.
And you don't know who Brock Glenn is, do you?
No.
I wouldn't have, except for directly after that conversation off air. I was like, wait, who is Florida State's third string quarterback?
Don't tell me that Rodemaker's not playing.
We don't know for sure, but Brock Glenn is trending. It doesn't look promising. Here's what we know about Brock Glenn. He is a 4-star prospect out of the 2023 class, so very young.
Tell me some better news other than 4-star.
That's all I got for you.
Oh, no.
He did have offers
Okay.
from Ohio State as well, Auburn, TCU. He was a reasonably highly coveted prospect. That's all I have. He had an LSU offer. That's all I have for good news.
How many kids of his age with that little playing experience, which is 0.
Yeah, I believe none.
Into a conference championship game have lit the world on fire?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. And because of those percentage points and having Florida State at 10 in my pick'ems this week.
That's high. That's pretty high.
I always put the college teams high.
Yeah.
Because those that I play with don't know as much about college football or talk about it as much as we do. I put Florida State that high because that's going to be a way for me to maybe steal some points back that I lose on NFL.
Would you like to guess how many passes he's thrown this year?
1.
4.
Oh, at least he's won 4 times that number, like Deion Sanders for Sports Person of the Year.
He just Deion'd you on that one, 400% more. He has 35 total passing yards.
Okay.
No picks, though, so that's nice.
What was his completion percentage on those 4 passes?
2 for 4.
Okay, 50%. I like where we're going.
He was 0 for 1 against Florida, but he was 2 for 3 against North Alabama.
Oh, no.
It's not bad. It's a first down each pass.
Robbie, I don't know if Shane knows, but North Alabama isn't the same as Alabama.
2 passes, 35 yards. That's 17 per. So that's 2 first downs. So you're doing good,
Shane.
We're not doing good here, Shane.
The Crimson Tide are different. It's a different team.
Yeah, I believe in North Alabama, it's like the Panthers or it's some sort of large cat.
They're not red.
No, they're purple. Actually, purple.
Nope,
they're the Purple
red.
Tide. Go Perps.
I wonder if, and this should be allowed, but the sheets had to be submitted by Thursday. That's just how they do it because of Thursday Night Football, which I did have the Cowboys at 15.
Ooh, nice.
Luckily.
Yeah, that game was crazy.
The Seahawks gave me a scare there for a while. I wonder if I can change the pick.
Yeah.
If that's allowed, because it's up to if everybody can change the pick then. Because if I change the pick and he says, hey, if there's a game, X, Y, and Z reason, he'll probably have to tell the league.
Yeah.
And then everybody's going to want to change the pick because I changed the pick.
Unless they had it low already or had Louisville or whatever. So Brock Glenn is trending on Twitter. I don't love it. So there is one thing that I saw as we continue our sports cleanup here that there's a rumor from a Florida State insider that the reason Tate Rodemaker is still listed as questionable / in the protocol is because of the timing required.
Mm-hmm.
There's a rumor from this source that is saying they believe Tate will start and that he just can't technically be cleared from the protocol yet, but he's fine. Like, he's done all the things that he needs to, but he just, from a timing standpoint, cannot be taken off of the protocol for 5 days or whatever it is. So there's a chance that's what this is.
I hope that rumor holds more weight than the Tony White rumor to USC.
Yes, which
lasted maybe 10 hours.
Thank God.
It was exactly what I thought. It was exactly what I thought.
Leverage. All on the leverage, which is fine. I'm okay. Well, listen, we talked about the internet making stuff up earlier. It's okay. That's one thing I'm glad that the internet was just making up and that there was no truth to it. I'm hoping there is truth to this one, but either way, the backup in that scenario, I believe, would be AJ Duffy, who was also a 4-star in the 2022 class. So Florida State's gotten 4 stars in 2022 and 2023. Neither of them have played any appreciable.
Well, the good news is if Florida State is forced to start their third stringer, Louisville has to do the same thing.
I don't think that's the rule.
That's not, you don't.
No,
what?
I don't think so.
But Shane told me, Shane.
So that's where.
What did I tell you?
Nothing, Shane. It's okay.
You just sit there and be quiet.
It's okay. So yeah, that's where we're at on that one. I'm a little scared. I'm a little concerned because, and we'll actually save the pick'ems here for the.
So oddly enough,
yeah,
4 pick'ems. I only have one of the Power 5 games in my pick'em.
So I like picking the games I'm going to watch, and so I almost always skew.
Well, I'm watching nearly every game.
Yes, but I'm definitely watching the major conference games and those ones. And so the ones that I'm going to be most dialed in on, I like having a pick in just because it kind of makes me feel like I've got a little stake in it.
Don't text me at all this weekend. The reason I say that is because
you're going to have to catch
officiating,
up. Yeah.
And I'm recording the games.
Yeah.
And I'm not checking social media to see the outcomes of these games. Normally, I do that when I miss like a Cardinal game or a Blues game if I really want to see it.
Conference championship weekend.
I don't want to know. So, don't text me. I hope no one hits me up on Twitter or social media where I accidentally see, hey, Andrew, did you see that last-second touchdown by Bo Nix? I'm going to be like, you're gone.
How dare
Unfollow.
you?
Unfollow.
Mute.
I will be watching the Oregon-Washington game at 10
Tonight.
o'clock.
Yeah.
I will then be watching, what game's first? Is it Oklahoma State,
Tomorrow?
Texas?
The earliest game, I've got the schedule here. So the earliest game tomorrow is Oklahoma State, Texas at 11. And then you've got the mid-afternoon game is Alabama, Georgia.
Which that game I'll get to watch the beginning of. I won't get to watch the end. So I probably will check that score because I'd be invested at that point.
Well, and also if it goes like a certain way and it's not interesting to watch, it's like you don't want to.
And I'll probably do the same thing with Texas because Texas is such a heavy favorite. But don't tell me about the Louisville game either.
I won't. I won't tell you about
Oregon, Washington, and Louisville, Florida State. Don't tell me about because I'm watching them later.
I won't say a word. Coming up next, we will get our picks in for the week and wrap up the show heading into Conference Championship weekend here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back as we wrap up the week, wrap up the show here on a Friday. Verz was unable to join us this week. We tried to move some things around, and he was unable to join us. So we appreciate Verz as always, but we know he's a busy guy. So just wanted to give you a programming note there. But we did want to get to our pick'ems. We were talking about our Warhorse Sportsbook Sports Cleanup in the last segment. Wanted to get to our picks as well. Obviously, a big college football weekend here. You went a lot of non-power conference games. All three of mine are power conference games. So let's start with one of yours.
Let's do the first game of the entire conference championship weekend.
Oh,
tonight's game at 6.
Doing my Liberty?
We're going with New Mexico State Liberty. I am leaning plus 11 in favor of New Mexico State. The Aggies beat Auburn by 21 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, smoked them.
Who has Liberty played? Middle Tennessee, Western Kentucky. Guess who played those teams too? New Mexico State.
They did.
Guess who won those games too? New Mexico State. Yes, Mexico State lost to Liberty already this season, but
that was way back in week 2.
But is Liberty 11-2 and 6-1 as an underdog covering in 10 straight? I don't think so.
No.
That's New Mexico State. Take the Aggies plus 11.
Now they are just 12-0, the Liberty Flames. So that is hard to argue with. I'm never going to bet against my guy, Jamie Chadwell. You know that. I didn't pick this game. I don't love the number here at plus 11. So from a betting standpoint, it's a stay away from me. But if I'm just going on a money line straight up winner, I will take the Liberty Flames just because I love my guy Jamie
Well,
Chadwell.
you know what?
You
I'd take
this.
Liberty too to win straight up, but
with the
that
numbers,
value
it's
is
a big
horrible.
number. Yeah.
And when I can see 11-2 ATS on the year,
and I could see New Mexico
right?
State winning. Like I genuinely could.
6-1 as an underdog, and they covered in 10 straight games.
Mm-hmm.
You have to lean with the numbers here. You have to go with New Mexico State plus 11.
Yeah, which is why it's a stay away for me, because I do think Liberty's going to win, but I could see New Mexico State winning. I don't want anything to do with it, but I like your play there. I'm going to stay with tonight's game as well.
Mm-hmm.
The other one tonight, Oregon and Washington.
I'll hit on that one too.
And I know you say it's a trap, and that's fine. That's fine. Listen, put me in the trap. I want Washington, the plus points. I think Washington wins this game outright. I really do. I think they prove they deserve to be in the college football playoff. I believe, listen, it's kind of like my guy with Jamie Chadwell. I'm a Kalen DeBoer guy through and through. I am going with Washington. Plus, it's back down to 9.5. It's starting to come down a little bit here. So
that means people are betting on Washington.
Yep. So I'm taking. They're falling into your trap, as you would say. I will take Washington though.
Trap,
plus, listen, when I got it, it was plus 10. I'm staying at plus 10.
So Oregon minus 9.5 would be my play. So based on what you hear, you can either choose one or the other, or you can avoid it altogether and just enjoy the game. And yes, I feel this game's a trap because Oregon is 9-2-1 against the spread this season. And this is one of those rare occurrences, Ravi, where an undefeated top 5 team is getting more than a touchdown in the conference title game. 2 times before this has happened. In 2008, number 1 undefeated Alabama was plus 10 against Florida in the SEC championship game. Then in 2020, number 2 undefeated Notre Dame was plus 11.5 against Clemson in the ACC championship game. Guess how those games ended?
I'm going to say not well.
Bama lost by 11. So minus 10 covered for Florida.
Okay.
And Notre Dame lost by 24. So the minus 11.5 covered for Clemson. History's play is on Oregon tonight. You take the Ducks minus 9.5.
I'm just saying 2 times is a coincidence. If it hits tonight, I'll call it a trend. As is, I'm still going with Washington.
That's what you call a winning streak.
Hey, they still count, right? The other one for me. Oh, wait, you're next. Go ahead.
Well, so it's a non-con game, and it is at 2:00.
Okay.
I say non-con game.
Non-major conference.
A non-major conference game. I forgot to put major in there.
I knew what you meant. It's fine.
On Saturday, Boise State, UNLV. I grew up a Boise State fan, probably because they played on a blue football field, but I'm taking...
Big Jared Zabransky guy.
I am taking the Rebels tonight, plus 2.5. The UNLV, 9-3 overall on the season, ATS. Or I'm sorry, 9-3 overall on the season. That matches up with the conference record of Boise State. Both teams are similar in terms of talent and skill. Where I'm going to get to the ATS number is now. UNLV is one of the best in the country at covering. I think they're second best. 10-2 on the year ATS. They're 5-0 as an underdog. You take UNLV plus 2.5 tonight or tomorrow afternoon.
So for me, the next one I was going to have was Florida State Louisville. Until I get a better picture on what's happening with Tate Rodemaker, that's a stay away. If Tate Rodemaker is healthy and playing, I'm going minus 1.5 for
I'd
Florida
lay the points
State.
on FSU too.
If he's not playing, it's a total stay away from me because I still think Florida State's better, but I have no idea what Brock Glenn is, and neither does anyone else because he's thrown 4 total passes.
You know what could be nice, though, is if Rodemaker doesn't play, monitor the line movement because guaranteed Louisville will start getting a ton of plays, a ton of value.
Yeah.
You could get Florida State
plus points,
and even plus money line money because of it.
So the one that I'm going to actually take is I think Alabama wins the SEC championship. I'm taking Alabama plus 5 here. I just think they're playing really good football right now. I think Jalen Milroe's legs end up being a huge problem for Georgia, and their lack of dominance in terms of the way they have been defensively the last couple years. They're still very, very good. I'm going to go with Alabama. We're going to change gears here a little bit. Those are our picks brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook and Casino. I'd like to take a minute to share something Just kind of a personal nature, because I always have prided myself on being transparent and genuine on the air. And it's just one of those times today where I feel like I need to do that. And I'm going to start in a weird way, so hang with me here. One of the things I love about daily radio shows is the fact that day in and day out, you have something that you look forward to and enjoy that you know is going to be there. I love that about radio when I was on the other side of the microphone, and I love it now that I do a daily radio show. There's something unique that happens when you spend that much time with anyone or anything. There's a fondness, a comfort, and even a love that develops. It's why when the Schick and Nick show went off the air all those years ago, I got a real bad case of those seasonal allergies when I talked to or heard my friends talk for the last time. And that's before I knew either of them. Luckily, been able to meet both of them now, and they're just as great in person as they were on the air. And luckily now you can hear them on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Same thing when Scott Van Pelt moved on from his radio show with Ryan Russillo. I loved that show, and I was really sad not to get to hang out with my friends anymore. They become staples of your daily life. I say all this because I've been trying to put into context something that happened in my life this past week. And I will admit it's far from a perfect metaphor, but when you're hurting, you kind of just grasp for things around you that you can put a context to help you make sense out of it. And I've been trying to make sense out of how heartbroken I've been this week after losing my dog, Tallahassee. She was my first dog, and she was a perfect dog for me. So this is a new thing I'm experiencing. On Wednesday, for the first time in 11 years, I woke up to a world that didn't have Tally in it, and it saddens me to my very soul. The best thing about Tally is also the worst thing now that she's gone. She always was around. She was always near me. This dog had exactly 3 hobbies in life: eating, sleeping, and being wherever I was. Even at the very end, when she could barely walk and illness had ravaged her aging body, she insisted on following me around the house. I had to either block her from following me when I was only going to be gone for a minute, and if I was gone too long, I had to carry her to wherever I was going because she had to be with me. She was 75 pounds, so that was not an easy feat, especially when we would go upstairs to bed. But if I'm being honest, I was doing it for me as much as I was doing it for her. Tally came into my life when I needed her in the worst way. I've dealt with anxiety and depression for most of my life and was struggling particularly badly at the time when I got her. Just the existence of Tally helped me almost instantly, and she continued to help me until I was ready to get the professional help that I needed. And her love never wavered for me in good times or in bad. It's not an exaggeration to say I may not still be here today if it weren't for my sweet Tally girl. Our love for each other pulled me through my darkest times. So why am I telling you all this, right? There's a few reasons. First, she was too good of a dog for only me to know about it. And what's the point of having your own radio show if occasionally you can't be a little self-indulgent about the things you want to talk about? Second, from the response I've gotten on social media, I know how many of you have dealt with the loss of a beloved pet. And I want you to know that you're not alone. You're not the only ones who loves their pets that much, and you're not alone in the sadness you feel. Because there's only one thing worse than being sad, and that's being sad and alone. And I promise you, not a single one of you is alone. And third, I just wanted to be more transparent and more open about some of the mental health issues I've dealt with in the past and still currently. That's a major part of my story with Tally is my mental health issues. And I know that's a major part of other people's lives and their stories as well. And if me saying this can make it even 1% easier to talk about mental health issues for other people, then it was worth it. So I end this week and my little monologue here by asking you to do something for me. If you've got a pet that you love at home, go home, give them a little extra squeeze for me. And whatever your drink of choice is, raise a glass to the pets we've lost, not in sadness, but in celebration of how they've made our lives better. Here's to you, Tallahassee.
I'm sorry, buddy.